Good morning, everybody. Welcome to RSBN Live. I'm Matthew Alvarez, taking that wide-angle lens and shot there of Washington, D.C. on this Wednesday, January 7th. What we have on deck today at 11 o'clock, the White House press briefing will happen. Karoline Leavitt, of course, will have that. And joining her today for a MAHA announcement will be RFK Jr. and Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins. So again, that's at 11 o'clock. We have a lot to get to from now until then. A number of recorded interviews, live interviews, right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. At 2:30 today, the president is scheduled to sign executive orders from the Oval Office. It's currently closed to the press, so that's at 2:30 today. Meantime, earlier this week, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth administered the oath of enlistment to 30 young men and women in Newport News, Virginia. Take a look. All right, so it looks like we're going to have a little technical difficulty on that video. That's the Department of War X video that we produced for this broadcast at the top of the broadcast there for the Department of War. Do we have that video, guys? All right, so we're getting to that right now as it's 9:32. Let's go to that video.
I'll tell you this, coming up here, I saw this strip mall here, and it reminded me of where I went to visit a recruiter when I was thinking about military service in my hometown of Forest Lake, Minnesota. I'm looking at a group of Americans here who did the very same thing because they want to be a part of something special. They want to raise their right hand to defend the Constitution and the country. You know what we care about at the War Department are the real men and women who do the real work in uniform for the American people, the real 1%. According to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God. So help me God. Congratulations. Give him a round of applause.
All right, so that took place in Newport News, Virginia on Monday. Meantime, before we continue with a number of interviews and tracking the news of the day, let's go to some of our sponsors here on Right Side Broadcasting Network, including All Family Pharmacy. You know, they're helping change how people can access medications by removing many of the barriers found in traditional pharmacies. So instead of, waiting weeks for appointments or dealing with insurance complications, customers can actually order online, have their request reviewed by a licensed physician, and receive medications shipped directly to their door. They offer a wide selection, including antibiotics, antivirals, Tamiflu, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, blood pressure medications, methylene blue, NAD+, and more. So this model is especially helpful for people who value convenience and timely access to the medications they may need. And if you want an easier way to get your medications, all you have to do is visit allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN and use that RSBN10 promo code to save that 10% today. Again, that's allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. I believe our next sponsor is Monetary Gold. There you see on your screen the number to call and also the website to visit as Wall Street veterans are, sounding the alarm. Many now say gold could climb to get this more than $7,000 per troy ounce. Right now it's north of $4,000 per troy ounce. And it's not wild speculation. The experienced investors, economists, and portfolio managers are tracking the indicators. So what's even more revealing is the behavior of central banks. They're trimming their exposure to U.S. Treasuries and increasing their gold reserves, so they're recognizing the pattern as well. That's why we rely on Monetary Gold. With more than 25 years in business, an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, and top 5 rankings from Consumer Affairs and Retirement Living, they've earned that reputation for trust and expertise. So all you have to do is call 888-617-7994 or visit rsbnforthegold.com before the next major move in the gold market. All right, it's 9:35 this morning, Wednesday, January 7th. Thanks again for live streaming in with us on this Right Side Broadcasting Network live coverage of the press conference. Of course, the press briefing at the White House today at 11 a.m. Usually it's a 1 o'clock press conference, today at 11 a.m. Karoline Leavitt says she'll be joined by 2 department leaders, RFK Jr., of course, of HHS, and then the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, will be there. They're making a Make America Healthy Again announcement as well on top of the press conference. So a lot to be heard today at 11 a.m. Of course, we have a number of interviews to get to, so let's do that right now. Let's go to Florida, where John Strand is running for Congress. Also, a J6er. This guy on the right side of history. It's great to see it. We interviewed him yesterday live, but it was cut off a bit while President Trump, of course, took to the stage. So we went to President Trump. So here is the interview in full. And joining us now on Right Side Broadcasting Network is John Strand from the great state of Florida. John, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, Matthew, thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure and really exciting new start to the year in 2026.
Exactly. So let's talk about that. What does it look like for you in 2026 when it comes to campaigning and becoming a congressman out of the state of Florida?
Yeah, it's an incredible time right now. We have such an opportunity. I keep telling people that 2026 is our generation's 1776. What do I mean by that? Well, in 1776, we had to make a decision as a people. When the settlers first came to settle the Americas, they actually still saw themselves as Englishmen. America was still being understood and born, but we came to this moment where tyranny became too oppressive, and the colonists had to decide, we are a free people. We're going to rise to our separate and equal station, as it says in the Declaration, because we have rights given to us by God that King George cannot overtake. So we had to come to that decision. But we remember the famous picture of President George Washington in Valley Forge, freezing in that famous winter, on the verge of defeat, thinking the Republic was going to slip from his grasp before it had even been created. And yet he trusted in God, and he had the resolve and support of a contingency of soldiers that committed to the principles of liberty and justice and overcame the oppression and birthed the Republic. I think we're at that moment again, Matthew. 2026 is a moment where President Trump clearly is our George Washington, but he can't win this battle against tyranny by himself. He needs soldiers. So I'm asking people to go to johnstrand.com and join the fight to get patriots into Congress so that we can reclaim this republic.
Exactly. That's what's needed. Real deal people, patriots that are everyday Americans as well, that have the people in mind and heart. And you're doing it for yourself as well, because you want to be free too. You know, let's talk about that a little bit, right?
Right. I know the value of freedom because it was taken away from me. I was thrown in a federal prison and abused terribly in isolation. Through this process, from a weaponized DOJ and a weaponized government over the Otto Penn Biden administration. But just because President Trump's back in office doesn't mean we've fixed the problem or we're in the clear. We're actually further into the battle than we've ever been. And this is such a pivotal moment. But yes, I am fighting for my own rights, my own freedom, my own family. And every American citizen should be fighting for that. They should be pursuing the destiny that God's created for them, the freedom of their own lives, their own rights, and their own families to prosper in security. And that's what America was founded for, but it really is under assault. And the only way, Matthew, that we're going to be able to reclaim the republic, as I keep talking about, is really understanding that America is for Americans. So, of course, I'm talking about our number one policy pillar for our campaign at johnstrand.com, which is sovereignty, meaning we have to shut down immigration entirely because it's a scam that's been exploited against the American people for far too long. I don't want a 50-year mortgage. I want a 50-year moratorium on all immigration until we clean our own house and set up America to be prosperous for Americans. But we're also needing to talk about what it means to be an American and what this country is for. And, you know, I really believe that being an American is committing to the covenant, or that's a word for a promise. America's a promise. And that promise is what? The Pledge of Allegiance. We are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we need people in government that will commit to those basic principles.
Amen. And that's what we want. That's what I want. You know, that's what a lot of people want. And again, it's common sense. And that's what you're speaking here for the constitutional rights of the people, to keep them and to keep the Constitution, the law of the land. Let's talk about the primary coming up. Tell us about the dates and then the election date and all of that so people know how soon this is actually all going to be.
That's a great question. Part of the struggle in our country is there's a lack of knowledge. My people perish for lack of knowledge, it says in the Bible. And there's a lack of understanding about just the details of elections and the civic process. So we need to really unite as a people and pound the pavement, whether it's on X and Instagram and digital platforms, or whether it's hopefully at churches and community centers in person, where we're engaging with our friends and neighbors and getting involved in the government, getting involved in politics. It's actually a responsibility that comes on all of us as American citizens. So the primary coming up for me, for our campaign, johnstrand.com, is August 18th of 2026. And actually, it's an important point, Matthew, because people lose track of primary elections. But that's where the battle's actually really waged. Because if you just wait until November to vote, you often are getting the lesser of two evils. You haven't actually participated in the process to select legitimate patriots and citizens that actually care about their country and really do believe in the Constitution and aren't bought and sold and paid for by the establishment. That's why I encourage people to go to johnstrand.com and get in this campaign. You know, this guy he didn't sell out to sell his own, he didn't sell out to save his own skin. I'm never going to sell the American people out either.
John Strand running for Congress out of Florida. Sir, again, thank you and good luck to you. We'll see you again later in the year.
Yes, sir. God bless you. And thanks to all the work you guys do. And God bless the United States of America, Matthew.
Thank you, sir. All right. So that interview yesterday, of course, with John Strand. We have a number of interviews to get to as well, including some live guests that will join us prior to the Karoline Leavitt press conference. Of course, the White House press briefing that is scheduled for 11 at the White House, looking live, or at least a recent photo of Washington, D.C., a wider angle, of course, right now, as it's 9:42 Eastern time. Let's go to a few of our sponsors before we head on to our next interview here. So Venice AI, of course, this is a beautiful display, by the way, and a great personal assistant when it comes to AI. You know, other AI programs can now reference all of your past conversations. So the question is, do you feel comfortable knowing an AI platform has that access? Well, the solution is with Venice.ai. So Venice utilizes leading open source AI models to deliver text, code, and image generation to your web browser. So there's no downloads, no installations of anything. They don't spy or censor the AI, and messages are encrypted, and your conversation history is stored only in your browser. So AI, of course, can be extremely valuable, but we shouldn't need to give up on the privacy to use it. So you can check it out there. Venice AI, beautiful display again. Download the app, go to the website, venice.ai/RSBN. Our next great sponsor, let's go to Angel Paste in Spring, Texas. Of course, if you go to Angel Paste, you can check out a lot of products there and use that RSBN promo code. Always goes a long way with a discount. Obviously, they hire military veterans, as we've told you here before on the network. So you can check it out if you're looking for any birthday gifts or any anniversary gifts coming up. Well, great spot to do it. Angelpaste.com. Great sponsor here on Right Side, including Tax Network USA. You see that number on your screen. This is simple. If you'd like financial peace of mind, you can get it through tnusa.com/RSBN. So Tax Network USA. So instead of being concerned about maybe one of the years you may have missed taxes, that kind of thing, well, these guys can help you out. Tax Network USA, 800-357-1415 is the number. All right, it's 9:45. In about an hour and 15 minutes from now, we'll see Karoline Leavitt live there at that White House that you see on your screen. And of course, we're hearing today that the Secretary, RFK Jr. of Health and Human Services, and the Agriculture Secretary, Brooke Rollins, will join Karoline Leavitt today. And they'll be talking about a MAHA announcement, so a Make America Healthy Again announcement. On top of that, of course, we'll hear the questions from the press at the briefing room there at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, as this is the first press conference for Karoline Leavitt in 2026. So a lot of people, of course, will watch that as we're tracking a ton of stories out there. But before we get into all of that and some more live interviews that will be coming up, let's go to the president of the National Religious Broadcasters, Troy Miller, for an interview. And joining us now on Right Side Broadcasting Network is Troy Miller. He's the president of the National Religious Broadcasters. Sir, thank you again for joining us on Right Side.
Hey, thanks for having me today.
Definitely. Let's talk about celebrating America's 250th anniversary. And then you guys also have a convention. Can you tell us about how you guys are celebrating America's 250th?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So we do have our annual media convention coming up in February 17th through the 20th, right here in Nashville, Tennessee at Opryland Gaylord Hotel. It's the largest gathering of Christian communicators. And on that Thursday night, we are going to celebrate and commemorate America's 250 by really looking at the foundation behind the country. What led up to that July 4th and that Declaration of Independence, and what role did Christianity play in that? And that's what our focus will be on for this celebration.
That's awesome. That's perfectly said. I mean, that sounds interesting to a lot of people, including communicators across this country. How have things changed before your eyes when it comes to mainstream media, conservative media, Christian media, and just all the things?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good thing. Just put it all a thing. I mean, look, our country was founded on these Christian principles. And one of those principles was freedom and truth and information. And that the premise was that if the people had the power in the people and the will, then they could self-govern in a way. That's how our whole government was set up. Look, we have changed so much from that today, especially when we look at media and mainstream media. I don't think we really have independent mainstream media anymore. I think legacy media, for the most part, are just propaganda houses for a lot of progressive movements today. And that's unfortunate, because we need that kind of media. Christian media has been filling in that gap. Christian media has really stepped up to be the media that is trusted by the population. We did a survey earlier this year, back in January, with the Barna Group, that found over 66% of the general population of America found Christian media valuable and trustworthy. And so that's a big step for us as Christian, big responsibility for us. But it tells you what's going on in the mainstream media today. The mainstream media, people just look at it again as a lot of propaganda.
Exactly. That's what we've been seeing. And then the actions are speaking louder than the words, and especially with you guys, national religious broadcasters, because you guys are helping to combat Christian persecution worldwide. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, and here's another failure of the mainstream media. Right now, over 380 million Christians are living under some sort of persecution, some sort of governance that is oppressing them, and a lot of times plainly outlawed them. I was in Nigeria this summer, and a lot of us know in the news, Nigeria has been in that news lately. The North has been atrocious. It's nothing short of a genocide of Christianity in the northern part of Nigeria. We see the same thing in other countries in Africa. We see this going on with Hindu nationalism in India. We've even seen our allies in South Korea arrest pastors for speaking from the Bible. And look, there have been over 1,000 arson events this year alone across Europe on churches that are there. And yet you look at the mainstream media, you would never know any of this. Less than 2% coverage across the board for this. So we've really been working hard to get this message out. It's the most dangerous belief to hold today, is the belief in Jesus Christ, to be a Christian.
Exactly. And it's the number one, it's the truth. So it's obviously getting attacked because it is so true. And how are you guys advocating now also for AM radio for every vehicle act? I mean, a lot of people love their AM radio.
They do love their AM radio. 80 million plus Americans love their AM radio. I'm a Nebraska farm boy that grew up and loved AM radio, and you listen to it, you depend on it. It's the number one source when there's a natural disaster going on to tune into. It's the best place to find, teach, and talk Christianity, gospel music, and conservative talk. Yet the car manufacturers want to pull AM radio. Not only that, they've actually announced Tesla now is going to take FM radio out of their lower models. General Motors is not going to allow you to connect your Apple CarPlay or your Android Auto to there. There's a real fight of who's going to control this information in the vehicle. Are you going to have to subscribe to an auto manufacturer's service to get that? Are you going to only be allowed to download the information they seem fit for you? Or are you going to have access to free over there? So we're hoping Congress back in session now. This bill has 350 co-sponsors. If Congress is supposed to represent the will of the people, there There isn't a more bipartisan bill right now sitting in the House of Representatives or the Senate waiting for a floor vote and get to the president's desk. So we're going to be pushing very hard this month to get that bill to the floor, get a vote on it. We think it's going to pass overwhelmingly, and AM radio is going to be protected in the vehicle at least for the next decade.
It would be great to see that happen. And how can people that are interested to learn more about National Religious Broadcasters learn more? What's the website? But also for those that may be in broadcasting that see this across the country and are interested in that Nashville, Tennessee event.
Yeah, exactly. So go to nrb.org. That's our main website. You can find out all of these issues, all the things that we're doing, all the different various laws we're tracking in regulations, also the fights on the corporate structure that's going on. All of that information is at nrb.org. You'll also find the link there to NRB Convention that will tell you about the national convention coming up in February. And look, whether you're a broadcaster, a podcaster, or just want to make your own social media better, we are running hundreds of workshops. We have almost 200 speakers that'll be there talking about all of these issues, plus giving a lot of hands-on of how to be a better communicator yourself.
That's awesome. Great stuff. The president of the National Religious Broadcasters, Troy Miller. Thank you again, Troy, for joining us here on Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Thanks for having me.
Definitely. All right, it's 9:52 this morning on Wednesday, January 7th. Looking live there at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Of course, we'll get to the White House press briefing with Karoline Leavitt, which starts at 11 a.m. today. Usually it's a 1 o'clock press conference. This time, 11 this morning, of course, joined by Brooke Rollins and RFK Jr. for a MAHA announcement as well. So we'll hear the questions from the press. We'll hear from Karoline and others today at 11 o'clock from the White House. Let's go to a few of our sponsors before we continue our live coverage here on Right Side. Let's go to callsheet.com/RSBN. If you're looking to bet, trade, or just check out various polls that are out there, you can do so. A lot of topics, whether it's sports or faith or politics, weather, all sorts of stuff. A lot of people just go into this just to check out the polls alone, let alone betting or trading, but you can check it all out if you'd like. Go to callsheet.com/RSBN and download the app as well if you'd like. More than 1 million users on Callsheet, that number growing, and a growing X presence as well there on the formerly known as Twitter, of course. All right, let's go to our next sponsor here on Right Side Broadcasting Network, including mypillow.com/RSBN. Of course, if you're looking to save some money, actually, you know what? Let's start with the priority. These are great products, as many of you know. I have a number of them. My family does as well. So if you're looking to get some more of those products or just kind of refresh some of the various things that you need out there, just go to mypillow.com and use that RSBN promo code. You'll get quite the discount off. The great Mike Lindell, of course, running for governor in Minnesota. And we'll be talking about Minnesota and California coming up, as there's someone running in California that is getting some support, and actually a lot of support from conservatives. We'll talk about that in just a bit. But go to mypillow.com/RSBN, as we have a great sponsor here at Right Side and some great products right there at mypillow.com/RSBN. Also, if you'd like to donate to Right Side, all you have to do is text RSBN to 801-801 or go to rsbnetwork.com/donate as we grow, as we expand here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, as we continue to cover conservative news. Say that 3 times fast. Here at Right Side, if you'd like to donate, you can. Text RSBN to 801-801. All right, meantime, there's a new Department of Homeland Security video posted by the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, showing the following. 2 pre-dawn operations today. The Coast Guard conducted back-to-back, meticulously coordinated boarding of 2 Ghost Fleet tanker ships, I believe obviously oil tanker ships, one in the North Atlantic Sea and one in international waters near the Caribbean. Both vessels, the motor tanker Bella 1 and motor tanker Sophia, were either last docked in Venezuela or en route to that country. I know that's really small for you to read there, so all you have to do is go to Secretary Noem's X page to read it in full. I read some of it right there for you, but let's take a look at this video. And this video, just a side note, has no audio. It's just a video from the military, so let's take a look. Okay, so you might be wondering what the heck was that if you just started watching Right Side right now. Well, that was a video posted by Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem moments ago, and you can get the specifics on her X page on those details, but we do have some of those details here for you. So just once again, that was video from 2 pre-dawn operations today. So the Coast Guard conducted back-to-back meticulously coordinated boarding of 2 Ghost Fleet tanker ships, one in the North Atlantic Sea and one in international waters near the Caribbean. So both vessels were told the motor tanker Bella 1 and the motor tanker Sophia were either last docked in Venezuela or en route there. Of course, full context on a lengthy post, if you'd like to check it out, from Kristi Noem on X. I just wanted to show that video. We're just monitoring what's happening out there as we are live here on Right Side Broadcasting Network, approaching the top of the hour here on Wednesday, January 7th. Let's go to a number of our sponsors before we continue some live interviews into the 11 o'clock hour, of course, for the White House press briefing from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Let's go to All Family Pharmacy, as you see there on your screen. RSBN 10, always great to use this for 10% off with All Family Pharmacy, because you know, at the end of the day, All Family Pharmacy is helping change how people access medications by removing many of the barriers found in traditional pharmacy. So instead of waiting weeks for appointments or dealing with insurance complications, customers can actually order online and have their request reviewed by a licensed physician and receive medications shipped directly to your door. And they offer a wide selection, including antibiotics, antivirals, Tamiflu, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, blood pressure medications, methylene blue, NAD+, and the list goes on. So this model is especially helpful for people who value convenience and timely access to the medications they may need. So if you want to get an easier way to get your medications, all you have to do is visit that website you see on your screen there, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Use the RSBN 10 promo code to save 10% today. Again, that's allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN and use RSBN 10 to save 10% today. Let's go to our next sponsor here on Right Side, Monetary Gold. All about getting, first of all, if you're not interested at all, why not at least get the info kit on gold? You can go to rsbnforthegold.com for that. You can also give them a call as well. We're going to get through those numbers here in a second, but this is all while Wall Street veterans, they're sounding the alarm, because many now say gold can climb to $7,000 per troy ounce. That's before President Trump finishes his term. And it's not wild speculation. Experienced investors and economists out there are tracking the indicators, and they're saying that they see the soaring national debt or the unchecked government spending and a dollar that's losing some purchasing power by the day. So a number of reasons why to at least look at gold and silver and precious metals as an option. If you're already involved with doing that, Monetary Gold's a great choice. All you have to do is give them a call, 888-617-7994, or go to rsbnforthegold.com before the next major move in the gold market. And of course, results can vary. Always consult with a financial or tax advisor before investing. Let's go to one more sponsor here on Right Side Broadcasting Network, Venice AI, venice.ai/RSBN. Of course, a great sponsor here at Right Side, a beautiful display right there. If you download the app, that's a great thing to do, because you'll have a personal assistant in the AI world. And other AI programs can now actually reference all of your past conversations, but the solution to all that, Venice AI. They utilize leading open source AI models to deliver text, code, and image generation to your web browser. There's no downloads, no installations of anything. They don't spy or censor the AI, and messages are encrypted, and your conversation history is stored only in your browser. So AI can be extremely valuable, but we shouldn't need to give up our privacy, of course, to use it. I checked it out the other day. Easy to use, good stuff. You can check it out as well. Venice.ai/RSBN. All right, it's 10:03, Wednesday, January 7th. Again, thank you so much for live streaming in on Right Side Broadcasting Network. For those of you just joining us, let's go over some housekeeping for the day. As we know, at 11 this morning, the White House press briefing will take place with Karoline Leavitt. Joining her today, according to Karoline on X, she said there's going to be a MAHA announcement. RFK Jr. and Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins will be accompanying Karoline Leavitt at the press briefing today. So we'll hear from the two leaders of those departments. We'll hear from Karoline, and also, of course, we'll hear the back and forth between the press and Karoline at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Speaking of the White House, the president will be signing executive orders at 2:30 today from the Oval Office. That is currently closed to the press. If that opens, I'm sure we'll be live with it right here on Right Side. Also, if we do get any video access to it, we'll be uploading that to our various social media platforms. All right, let's go to a video as we await our first live interview of the day. Earlier, if you were watching, those were recorded interviews from just yesterday. And we'll be going to a number of great people here in just a minute. But the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, actually posted on the Department of War X page a recent video. So let's go to that one from Newport News, Virginia. A number of new recruits are now a part of the U.S. military. Take a look.
I'll tell you this, coming up here, I saw this strip mall here, and it reminded me of where I went to visit a recruiter when I was thinking about military service in my hometown of Forest Lake, Minnesota. I'm looking at a group of Americans here who did the very same thing because they want to be a part of something special. They want to raise their right hand to defend the Constitution and the country. You know what we care about at the War Department are the real men and women who do the real work in uniform for the American people, the real 1%. According to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God. So help me God. Congratulations. Give them a round of applause.
All right, that video from the Department of War pretty recently. Also, the Department of Homeland Security video that we just showed you is getting a lot of play on social media as well, of course, because this was that pre-dawn operation that took place there. We may be able to play that again in just a bit, but let's talk about it. I mean, the DHS video is showing two pre-dawn operations that happened today. So the Coast Guard conducted back-to-back meticulously coordinated boarding of two Ghost Fleet tanker ships, oil tanker ships, one in the North Atlantic Sea and one in international waters near the Caribbean. Both vessels, one is called the Motor Tanker Bella 1 and the Motor Tanker Sophia, were either last docked in Venezuela or en route there. So there's a lot of information from Kristi Noem on X on that, a huge post there. If you want to take a look as we... why don't we show that video one more time here, Director, as we get ready for our next live interview. So that video from the Department of Homeland Security of this pre-dawn operation today, again, where the Coast Guard conducted back-to-back meticulously coordinated boarding of two Ghost Fleet. Now, there's no audio on this video, but let's take a look at it from the Department of Homeland Security. Okay, just to review, that was video from the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. And just to review what you just witnessed there, obviously no audio on that video. It was 2 pre-dawn operations that happened today. The Coast Guard conducted back-to-back, meticulously coordinated boarding of 2 quote-unquote ghost fleet tanker ships. This, according to Kristi Noem, one in the North Atlantic Sea and one in international waters near the Caribbean. Both vessels, the motor tanker Bella 1 and the motor tanker Sophia, were either last docked in Venezuela or en route. And if you're looking for a bunch of context on those operations there, you can go to Kristi Noem's X page, quite the lengthy post in regards to the operation there on X. All right, before we get to our first live interview of the broadcast, this is all brought to you by Angel Paste, of course. So angelpaste.com out of Spring, Texas. You can use that RSBN promo code. It goes a long way, of course, for all of the products from Angel Paste down there in Texas. Of course, they hire military veterans, a great sponsor of this network, angelpaste.com. Same goes for Tax Network USA, a great sponsor here at Right Side. Been with us for quite some time as well. 800-357-1415 is the number. If you're looking for financial peace of mind, you can get it through Tax Network USA. If you don't want to call, just go to the website, tnusa.com/RSBN. Again, financial peace of mind, you can get that right there with Tax Network USA. Some great patriots at tnusa.com/RSBN. And finally, for this segment, callsheet.com. If you're looking to bet or trade or just check out various polls, you can do so at callsheet.com, or check out the app if you'd like, or right there is the QR code on your screen. So they have more than 1 million users right there on Callsheet. A lot of people enjoying that site there, callsheet.com/RSBN. All right, so at 11 a.m., the White House will have the press briefing today with Karoline Leavitt, of course, and joining her today for a MAHA announcement will be RFK Jr. and Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins. We'll have that for you here at 11 o'clock. At 2:30, the president signs executive orders from the Oval Office. It's currently closed to the press, so we'll see if we'll get that, if it opens up a little bit later. Sometimes that does happen. All right, it's 10:13, Wednesday, January 7th. Let's go now to conservative correspondent Ann Vandersteel, great patriot, joining us here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Ann, thank you so much for joining us.
It is awesome to be with you today, Matthew. This incredible time to be alive, as they like to say. And I think we're heading into the eye of the storm, and hopefully we're going to slingshot out on the other side with everybody still intact.
Exactly. You know, we want to win, and we want to serve we the people, as you and I know, and as the people know, and as President Trump knows. I mean, that's what this is all about here. Speaking of the president, yesterday he said, if we lose the midterms, they will impeach me. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about securing our elections going into those midterms, which is this year.
You're absolutely right. And we have failed to do that yet. Tulsi Gabbard is really up to speed. And obviously, this is a national security concern of the highest order of what we've learned from Venezuela and Serbia, and the reporting that Emerald Robinson has done, along with Patrick Byrne and others, exposing how much foreign interference actually exists, not only in our elections, but in 72 countries around the world. And our own CIA has been very helpful in, engaging in color revolutions, et cetera. So we are really at the mercy of the intelligence community and the bankers that finance that. But frankly, Matthew, we're really not just dealing with politics anymore. We're actually, to coin a phrase, as General Flynn likes to say, we're dealing with a regular warfare against the American people, because elections are now clearly part of that battle space. And this 5th generation warfare, information, lawfare, cyber, psychological, all the ops that are going on, the goal isn't persuasion, it's total control. And Trump, frankly, has been the primary obstacle to that control. So as he said so articulately, they're not after me, they're after you, and I'm standing in the way, and they've got to take him off the chessboard, and impeachment is clearly going to be an issue.
Exactly. So now if we look at voter reform, which President Trump spoke about, of course, on Truth Social and, at various events at the White House, when we look at voter reform, when we dive into it, it's something that a lot of people know about. It's the voter ID, it's same-day voting, it's paper ballots, and all of that. Do you think that's something we can really get done in time for November 3rd of this year for these all-important midterm elections?
Well, that's a question for the people. How do they feel about their elections? I mean, just go county by county. We can prove that there's been fraud in every single election, in every single county. That has already been presented to the courts. That we have, unfortunately, a court system, a judicial system that is corrupt. So the people have to make these decisions. They have to put pressure. And frankly, in federal elections, the federal government controls it. And President Trump, if he can't get Congress to act, what he needs to do is just declare an executive order and say, since the EAC has not been able to certify these machines properly, we know that they're being infiltrated and that they're on the internet and open to foreign influences and foreign powers. They're adversarial to the United States. That frankly, we need to not use the machines. We need to go to one day or same day voting for federal elections. We need to have voter ID. We need to do paper ballots where people fill in the little O's with their number 2 pencil. And we need to have them hand counted in smaller precincts. So increase the number of precincts in every county and then hand count every single paper ballot. We don't even need to have a machine tabulate them because all of these machines, as we have proven, even the tabulators have been infiltrated and they can, adjudicate those numbers however they want. So we have got to get back to basics. Look, they did that. They still do it in many countries around the world. And when Milei won down in Argentina, they had same-day elections, one-day vote. Everybody was counted, and a libertarian won in a very, quote, socialist country. So I think we're going to get a real clear indication, a true temperature check of who America is if we can get that done. And again, the people have to put the pressure on the president and tell him and demand that they want this.
If you're just joining us now, this is a conservative correspondent, of course, and a great patriot, Ann Vanderstill, joining us live right here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. And to that point, on X, Elon Musk highlighted voter ID laws throughout all of these nations. I think it was 70 countries he put there, and it was all green check marks next to all these nations that have voter ID. And the only X in red was the United States. Can you believe it? I mean, this is the country that's supposed to be leading the way, especially having free and fair elections.
Well, listen, when America and the American taxpayer has been the world's ATM, and we've now realized the mass and enormous fleecing of American tax dollars. I read a Substack recently, and I ran it by some people that I consider trusted sources, people who would have answers to this. 50% every tax dollar is basically fraudulently absconded with and sent elsewhere, and then funneled back into certain election coffers to make sure that the same people continually have the props they need to get reelected. So we are done being the world's ATM. I think what we're seeing relative to the rest of the world is, I don't like to use the word oligarch lightly, but we're seeing the world divided up into three areas, right? You've got the United States and the Monroe Doctrine coming back to life under the Trump Doctrine, which is something I've been advocating for since I spent time on the border and down in the jungles of Panama watching the mass weaponized human migration. You've got Xi over Asia, Southern Asia, primarily in the South Pacific, and then Putin is going to take Russia and Europe, which Europe has done. They've completely folded and collapsed. So we've got to get cooler heads prevailing. And if you start to look at what happened in Venezuela and the fact that none of the Russian systems work to prevent the Americans from going in and engaging in that operation to take Maduro, I don't think it's because the Russian systems failed. I think there was a quiet agreement, frankly, to allow that. So we have got to get, all of this back under control because, frankly, I do believe the world is at the turning point where they are recognizing that people do not want to be ruled by a bunch of thugs. And frankly, America has been the piggy bank to thugs for the rest of the world, and it's got to end. And the only way we're going to solve that is we've got to clean up our elections and get a Congress in there that'll actually listen to we the people and stop with their handout to the donors that have special interest and other foreign terrorist interests that want to continue to weaponize our money against whoever. And that's where we are right now. It's a critical time, and these elections coming up are incredibly important.
And to your point, conservative author T.S. Dixon once said something about the fact that it's the 8 billion people versus the 800, right? The globalist
Correct.
Structure trying to control all of the people of the world, basically. Isn't that what it is?
It absolutely is. When you consider that phrase, there's far more of us than there are of them. You just made that point so eloquently, and there are. And this is why you're seeing the uprising. I mean, what's happening in Iran right now is really quite, critical. And this is not the first time the Iranian people have been rising up against the mullahs and that horrific regime, which we installed, our CIA installed, and let that run amok. You have to look at the agenda of the intelligence community as driven by and financed by the international bankers, which are using our tax dollars and the interest we pay on them to do all these operations. When you start to look at it through that lens, it becomes very clear who the real enemy is. It's not the Iranian people. They're shouting death, to Khomeini and to the mullahs. They're not shouting death to America. This is what the world doesn't understand. This is where the American people have been completely lied to and misprogrammed by the mainstream media. And frankly, we have to be incredibly attuned. If you start to put the lens on that people by and large are good and that those running the rest of the countries around the world are evil, then you can see clearly that we can come together and we need to support one another. And America has always been sort of the cop on the beat for the rest of the global empires. But we're turning a point right now, and the National Strategic National Security paper that just came out really speaks to that it's time for other people to start policing their regions. And I think we're approaching that rather quickly.
Freedom versus tyranny. I mean, it's common sense stuff, isn't it, Ann? I mean, you are a wealth of knowledge and a great patriot that has quite the following on social media. But, a lot of times people like you, people would want to censor someone like you, wouldn't they?
It's happened many times. I'm not alone in that. I've been fired from LinkedIn, from Facebook, from X or Twitter 3 times. YouTube channel's gone. Even Rumble took my channel down for a period of time. So yeah, the censorship is real. And if I was, such a threat, for what? What am I so threatening? Am I saying anything that's out of line from our founding fathers' ideas when they decided to build this beautiful country? I don't think so. I think most Americans are straight down the middle, constitutional conservatives. They may lean left or right one way or the other on social issues, but when it comes to the fundamentals of freedom, I don't see how people find that having an ID to vote is considered racist. That is the most ridiculous thing. If you're going to drive a car, you need an ID to drive a car. If you want to walk in a bar at night, you got to prove you're over 21. Is that racist? No, it's not. This is just the narrative that the establishment, I can't even call them the left because it's the establishment, which includes the uniparty, that throws out there all the time to, again, misdirect and make you feel, oh my goodness, I've got to, I can't go there because it's just socially unacceptable. Stop with the virtue signaling and just look at this thing through fundamental lens of what's right, what's wrong, what is America supposed to be, and then throw everything else out, because that is what the uniparty has allowed to infiltrate our country. I mean, just looking at the Somalia fraud situation, the billions of dollars, while we have homeless veterans sleeping on a street, we can't get money for the American people, but we can send it overseas and then we can let 50% of our tax money go through fraud and out of the country. No, this has got to stop. And again, it goes back to we've got to get these elections under control, because if they impeach President Trump, not only will he be a lame duck president, but he'll be a lame duck president that could potentially go right back into in a private life that will try and lock him up. And that's just not acceptable.
So let's talk about the need for law and order, accountability overall to save the country moving forward, and transparency. I mean, this is what a lot of people are talking about throughout the United States of America. Or is it just you and me, Ann?
No. Every time I turn on my phone or I get phone calls from people all over the country. You'd be surprised who calls, actually. And these are people that are loyalists, and they're saying, are we ever going to get accountability? What is going on? Why is Pam Bondi not doing anything? Now, before I disparage Pam Bondi, I will say this: the FBI has done, started to make a small dent in, and same with Tom Homan's group on the child traffickers, and that is critical. We should be rescuing hundreds of thousands of children. It shouldn't just be hundreds. It should be hundreds of thousands. So, the fact that we have not seen accountability, we've had people that were in social media go into work in the FBI, and, the game they talked up on social media, driving a lot of numbers and views and financial rewards, to have that not manifest when they're in the FBI must have been incredibly frustrating for them. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons they wanted to leave. But again, you've got Kash Patel on there running it. You have Pam Bondi, you have Todd Blanche. And I have to ask, who is the choke point? From where all my sources are telling me, it's Todd Blanche, and that Pam Bondi doesn't spend a lot of time at the DOJ. I don't know that for a fact, but I hear this from a lot of people who see her all over the place, except in Washington, D.C. So it is hearsay reporting, but that is disturbing. And I guess you have to look then at the results, right, Matthew? It's how many people have we locked up? When you have Ben Berkman, who was able to walk up to Adam Schiff in the airport yesterday in Los Angeles and ask a bunch of questions while Pencilneck seemingly tries to walk away and shirk away. Why is he still walking around? Why are any of these people? We know Pelosi was behind January 6th. We actually know who all the incredible people were behind J6. Why have they not even been indicted? This is the problem that Americans are having, and they want accountability. They wanted the border closed, and they want accountability. And if you get accountability, I can assure you President Trump's approval ratings and his ability to be impeached, well, ratings will go up and the impeachment, percentages will go way down. It's just, this is the dichotomy of what we're living in right now. And I think President Trump is actually really hearing it this time.
Exactly. I mean, he spoke about this at an Oval Office meeting a few months back, saying that we should be doing more. I remember him closing the notebook and being kind of frustrated about that. So, to your point, I mean, Steve Bannon, Peter Navarro, and others, facing all that lawfare and what they dealt with, so we'll see what happens there. And again, for those of you just joining us, this is conservative correspondent and great patriot Ann Vandersteel joining us live on Right Side. Before I let you go, Ann, I understand that you're holding a huge press conference on Monday in Washington, D.C. So Monday in Washington, can you tell us about what that is?
Certainly. The MMTLP community, if you haven't heard about MMTLP, this is a group of 65,000 Americans, up to 100,000, including international people, who invested in a company, a stock ticker, I should say, that was originally issued as a placeholder dividend share. It was not a tradable ticker. And unfortunately, what happened is because these two companies that merged and put this placeholder dividend out there as they were preparing to spin off another company, for which if you owned this dividend, you would get a share of the spin-off company. What happened is somebody in Wall Street managed to convince FINRA, the Financial Regulatory Association, which is administration, which is supposed to be monitoring Wall Street, to allow them to just go ahead and trade that ticker on the over-the-counter exchange in Canada. The two CEOs said, we never approved that. That was not the idea. We're going to file what's called a S1 form to spin off a new company. And this unfortunate incident is people invested in this and they sold millions and millions of shares. Originally, 165 million were issued. But what ended up happening is Wall Street, as it always does, as we're seeing with silver, they naked short sold that ticker, meaning they didn't have the shares. They either borrowed or rehypothecated or made them up and sold millions more of that stock ticker share. And when this S1 was getting filed, they wanted to bring those shares under the umbrella of that transfer agent attached to that new company, which means everything would have to reconcile. If you owned a physical share of MMTLP, you were going to get another share over here. And sadly, Wall Street reached out to the SEC, and we have this in a FOIA'd email, Matthew, in their own writing, where they were saying, whoa, I'm going to paraphrase here, we can't let that happen. That S1 cannot get filed, because if it does, we're going to have to present all the shares we don't have that we've sold by the millions. And so they had a freak out, and they had FINRA halt the trading of that stock 3 days earlier than they had originally told the shareholders that they could, hang on, you're going to get your exchange or you can get out. And so these shareholders were literally cut off from being able to sell off their shares and get their money out, while Wall Street, who nakedly sold those shares, Matthew, never had to reconcile those naked shorts. So they made millions selling naked shorts and never had to, proof up in the end. And this is what happens. It happened to GameStop. It's happened to AMC. It's happened to Bed Bath & Beyond. Truth Social, same thing. TMTG. So this is a big deal. And the SEC and FINRA are now caught in their own words. And so we are bringing the heat to them. And I can tell you that the community is really, really rallying behind this. I'd like to thank the Zolniks who sent me this dog tag. This is, a gift from the MMTLP community. I wear it with pride every day because these people are governing and they're holding their government accountable. So I'm just helping.
And you're helping on Monday in Washington, D.C. Ann Vandersteel,
Yes.
Thank you so much for spending the time with us here on Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Thank you.
All right, Ann Vandersteel joining us live there. And, here on Right Side Broadcasting Network, that's what it's about. It's about freedom of speech. And it's great to have people like Ann, a patriot out there, join us here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. All right, it's about the bottom of the hour, 10:30, Wednesday, January 7th. Before we get to our next live interview, let's go to a commercial break. We'll be right back here on RSBN.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from Diamond and Silk Chit Chat Live. Look, don't forget to watch my show right here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. It's imperative that you do so, okay? Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door.
Welcome back to Right Side Broadcasting Network, as we will be going live, of course, to Washington, D.C. there to see this White House press briefing with Karoline Leavitt coming up. And we're told that the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, and the Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., will be in that press briefing as well today to make an announcement about making America healthy again. So we'll have that for you here on Right Side. A little bit later at 2:30, President Trump will be signing some executive orders from the Oval Office. Just reporting to you what's happening when it comes to the president's public schedule, as again, it's 10:32 Eastern time. Let's go to All Family Pharmacy, one of our great sponsors here, before we get to our next live interview. All Family Pharmacy is helping change how people access medications by removing many of the barriers found in traditional pharmacies. And instead of waiting weeks for appointments or dealing with insurance complications, customers can order online and have their request reviewed by a licensed physician and receive medications shipped directly to their door. They offer a wide selection, including antibiotics, antivirals, Tamiflu, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, blood pressure medications, also methylene blue and NAD+. Also, the list goes on. So the model is especially helpful for people who value convenience and timely access to the medications they may need. So if you want an easier way to get your medications, just visit allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN and use that RSBN 10 promo code to save 10%. Let's go to our next sponsor here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. That includes MyPillow.com, the great Mike Lindell running for governor in Minnesota. Also has a TV network out there, and then also a company here with MyPillow.com. Great products there at MyPillow.com/RSBN. Use that RSBN promo code. It goes a long way. As you see there, save up to 80%. I believe that sale is still going on, even though Christmas was a few days back. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't mind keeping up some of the Christmas decorations and the lights, that kind of thing, for a few more extra days, as we are dealing with some different kind of weather up in the Northeast and down here in the Southeast when it comes to the temperatures are a little bit more balmy right now. They weren't over the holidays that way, but right now it's a little warm out there, at least on this side of the country. Those of you in the Midwest, the Mountain Time Zone, West Coast Time Zone, I know you guys have your various weather out there as well. All right, let's go to our last thing to talk about here during this segment. You can text RSBN to 801-801 to donate to Right Side Broadcasting Network, or you can go to rsbnetwork.com/donate if you'd like to donate to Right Side as we grow and expand here in conservative media. If you'd like to follow me on Truth Social, it's at Matthew Alvarez. If you'd like to follow me on X, it's at Matthew US Media. And of course, if you'd like to follow RSBN, it's at RSBN on Truth Social and at RSB Network on X. Let's go to our next live interview. We're going to go from Ann Vandersteel in Florida down to, or up to, New York City. Let's go to Staten Island, where the president of the Staten Island Young Republican Club, Robert Berghead, joins us right now. Robert, thanks so much for joining us once again here on Right Side.
Thank you, Mark, for having me, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you too, man. Let's talk about the New Year. So on January 1st, Mr. Mamdani decides, let's go to the City Hall subway stop, which I've lived in New York too. And I guess the City Hall stop is not even being used right now. So it's kind of like a dark dungeon. And that's where he put his hand on the Quran, and he was sworn in to be the mayor of New York City, our largest city in the country. First of all, your 30,000 foot view reaction to that and Mamdani being the leader of the city.
Well, you and I once connected on the wild turkeys running around Staten Island, and I have to say, the city swore in its first turkey as mayor. It has been a wild couple of days. This gentleman ran on affordability, and I think it's quite interesting that he's done anything but affordability. He's signed executive orders into action on day one, undoing everything that Mayor Adams did in his final months. One of those executive orders was to basically redefine the definition of anti-Semitism and other. The executive order barred city employees from boycotting anything having to do with Israel, and he just that was priority number one for our mayor. And then just yesterday or the day before, he stood with our governor celebrating their tax on constituents. Specifically, it affects Staten Islanders because we have to pay a toll as it is to go over the bridge, and now we have to pay a congestion pricing fee. And they were celebrating taxing their constituents, that it's working and there's no traffic, and he's doing everything but try to cure the affordability crisis. So it's not been that long, and we're in for an interesting couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're 7 days into the new year. He's been mayor for 7 days. And I'd like to have you on the broadcast, in a couple months, because we got to see how things are going in New York. Of course, the media will report on it, but only the conservative media is what I would watch or read, right? Because we know what the mainstream media is like, and we know what it's like in New York City. Of course, even the local news there, just super liberal against, all of the truth that's out there. But so what is it like for you to stay there in Staten Island and represent a number of great patriots?
It is. I will tell you, Staten Island is definitely a borough of its own. We do have great elected officials that people wonder, how does Staten Islanders feel? Well, we keep electing the same conservative Republicans that just exude our values. And what does that mean? Low taxes, affordability, real affordability. And it really is nice to speak to people, blue collar, everyday Americans, from the teacher to the firefighter to the police officer to healthcare workers, transit workers. And it's so ironic that they continue to raise taxes and they continue to just not hear from our borough and the issues. And they just keep raising the cost of living and chasing everybody out. And so it's incredible to live amongst patriots. Our borough, I've mentioned this before to you, we 3 times in a row in the presidential election, I think President Trump won by the highest margin in any other county. And that's excluding the primaries, which he also won. So, everybody just wants to be safe, family values, send their kids to school, raise their children and not be told what they could learn in school. And that's just the American dream. And for some reason, they just, even Democrats, I don't know, take the politics out of it. Just do what's good for your constituents. Everybody's staying silent right now on this mayor, except for the Republican elected officials on Staten Island.
It's from New York to LA. It's the people that live in New York and LA that are conservatives. Are you seeing an exodus at all? I mean, seriously, any of your personal friends or people that you work with, that kind of thing, are you saying, has at least one person said, peace, I'm out of here?
There's a few neighbors that have gone, I think different stages in their lives, but there are a lot of people that want to stay to see, I just recently had a death in my family. My grandfather passed away in October, shortly after we last met. And, he was born and raised Staten Islander for 95 years. He built his house. He was so proud. The city that he was able to stand on the corner and get a job on and walk the streets with his friends. And, he left that for our generation to continue to fight for my children and for everybody else's families. And so, yeah, there are people that are frustrated, but there are people that have doubled down and want to stay and fight because we are not lost. Staten Island is not lost, and there's a collective bubble in New York City that seems to be lost. But there are other parts of New York too that are red, and I think little by little over the last couple of years we picked up seats in our local state assembly races. People are getting fed up, and they're really starting to wise up to what the Democratic Party stands for, which is clearly socialism today in electing Mayor Mamdani.
Exactly. And I'm sorry for your loss, your grandpa, for 95 years. Wow. That's something. My family's from New York as well. So it's I understand that pride of where you're from and winning and not letting the left take it over. And you look at the Bronx. When we were out there for President Trump's campaign and he spoke at in the Bronx, I mean, there were tons of people that are conservative just in the Bronx alone. My mom was born in Brooklyn, dad in Manhattan. We see Long Island out there. Of course, it's not part of the city, but still, that whole region of the earth, how many millions of people live right there? And a lot of people I believe, are common sense people that just want, exactly to your point, just the freedom to live their life and the American dream. So it's just, it's tough to see with Mamdani there. And then if you look across into Seattle, have you checked out the Seattle mayor as well? It seems like that would be the sister of Mamdani, basically, when it comes to the socialist, communist policies.
Yeah, they don't stand for anything that is of substance today. There's an article today in the New York Times. The Democratic Party is trying to they're actually trying to redraw the district lines for the third time in our congressional district and expand our congressional district into the Upper East Side of Manhattan, and kind of steal a congressional seat away because it's the only Republican seat in New York City. I mean, they don't stand for anything. And again, it is dangerous. I think it's part of why I'm on this mission to lead this club. I think it's from 18 to 42 years old. I think, individuals need to understand, where your tax dollars are going and, how to better utilize that to improve your life, not to take more of it to give it to people that aren't even from here. And so that is why we do what we do every day, fighting to preserve those freedoms. And I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep fighting, and we're going to fight back against this, get that message out and make sure that people are aware of what's really taking place.
We, the people of the country, are with you there in New York City because we, the people, also exist in that city, even though Mamdani is leading it, unfortunately. The president of the Staten Island Young Republican Club, Robert Burkhead. Thanks again, Robert, for joining us. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you, Mark.
All right. So 10:43, Wednesday, January 7th. Getting ready for the White House press briefing at the White House. Of course, the James S. Brady press briefing room. So today we're going to see Karoline Leavitt there. We'll also see two of the department leaders, RFK Jr. of HHS and Brooke Rollins, the Secretary of the Department of Agriculture, will be there. They're making a MAHA announcement as well. So kind of a newsy day, of course, when it comes to the press briefing and whatever the announcement will be. In the meantime, let's go from New York City all the way out to California, I believe in Southern California. Let's go to Kate Monroe right now, the CEO of VetCom and conservative author and military veteran. Thank you again, Kate, for joining us on Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. All right. So we just talked New York City politics, and I know that recently you went to Los Angeles, specifically Skid Row, with a great person that's running for governor there in California, the Riverside County Sheriff, Chad Bianco. So can you talk to us about why you did that and an update from the West Coast?
Well, when I was running, people would say to me, okay, there's a homeless problem, there's a border problem, there's a this and that problem, but what are you going to do about it? And I had to look inside my heart and say, first off, I need to go see the breadth and depth of this problem myself. I need to go boots on the ground and actually see it and then formulate my own opinion. And I think for him, having been a sheriff for so long, you're only seeing one side of the picture, right? You're seeing it through that one lens. So my goal was to get him out, get him dirty a little bit, get him talking to the homeless people, talking to the service workers, talking to the police, and really getting a bigger scope. So that the ideas that he can come up with, and hopefully he liked my ideas, about the base camp. But I wanted to get him out there, get him dirty, and get him showing the voting public, hey, I'm not scared to go boots on the ground and go solve these problems in real time.
Exactly. I mean, and we're going to show a portion of that video in just a minute of you and the Riverside County Sheriff and the California gubernatorial candidate Chad Bianco out there just talking about the issues that are seen and felt in Los Angeles and how to take care of them, how to tackle those issues. A lot of times, as actually, you probably should talk about it more because obviously you're a resident of that state. But what is it like to be a Californian these days?
For me, it's embarrassing. It's gone so far and away from, we talk about being 80s kids, 80s and 90s. It was just a very different place. I also grew up in Northern California, which is a little bit different than down in LA, but it's embarrassing. But I will say, I still believe we can fix it. I don't think we've crossed over the event horizon. I think if we get a leader in there that's willing to take opinions of other people and ask for help, and people who have actually been boots on the ground, we're going to see big changes. But I'll tell you, yesterday, Skid Row's pretty gnarly. It's pretty embarrassing. I felt sad for the people there that the money in California never makes it to the streets. When you're talking to the homeless and all the homeless workers, they will tell you somewhere from the top to the bottom, the money's getting put in all kind of pockets. So it's just embarrassing. The level of fraud, waste, and abuse is even worse than the homeless problem itself because one causes the other. When you don't put any money into programs and you don't audit any of the programs, that's what you get. You get eternal homelessness, and it's just a big cycle that feeds itself.
If we look at what Nick Shirley uncovered in Minnesota and others out there, and we look at California and fraud, if we were to put a football score to it, how many points for California, how many points for Minnesota when it comes to fraud? What would the score be?
The score would be 100-10. I mean, it would be Minnesota's fraud is a speck of sand on the beach compared to California's fraud. Because if you just correlate the numbers, just the sheer amount of money produced here and given to these initiatives, it's so much more. The population here, the amount of illegal migrants and activity and homeless. So it just 10x it very easily is the fraud that you're going to find in California. And I would imagine it's even more than a 10x number.
So you're saying that if you and I and Nick Shirley and anybody else, we went out there and did some investigations, you're saying we would find 100-10 over Minnesota?
100-10. And I'm actually going to maybe take that on. I really like what I've done a lot of investigative journalism. I think I'm going to take some of that on here in California. They should be a little nervous because I do pretty good investigative work and I have a pretty big following. So I can't wait to rip the thread back and see what we find.
Exactly. I mean, that's going to be interesting. I mean, you were boots on the ground just recently in Los Angeles there with the gubernatorial candidate and, of course, the Riverside County Sheriff. But you've also been boots on the ground before. Where else were you? Was it down along the border? What state was that? Can you talk to us about that again?
So I've done many different things. I exposed homelessness in San Diego and Oceanside. I went to Skid Row. I've gone to the Tenderloin. I've been to Portland. I've walked even in New York. And there's a thread that ties all of it together. It's an unwillingness to just say, we're going to enforce the law. And I think if we can just flip the switch back on, because all the police are still there, the laws still exist, we just don't enforce them. So if we just enforce the laws, you'll see a lot less of that. But I've also gone down to the border in San Diego many times, about 30 times. I've even secured spots down at the border. And it's amazing to just say, we're not going to go quietly into the night. You can just order razor wire and go to the border. You can get in a car with your buddies and a cell phone and go expose what we did on Skid Row. We need more people to leave their houses. Watching you and I and going, yeah, go get them. That's not enough. I mean, the bare minimum you can do is vote, but you can vote and. So what is your and? That's what I would ask people. You're going to vote and then what are you going to do?
That's a great point. That's a great point. I mean, because you can speak up a lot. You can talk to your friends. You can talk to your coworkers. You can get out the vote. You can do a lot to really push legislation. You could put pressure where pressure needs to be put, you know? Because at the end of the day, the only people that would try and silence we the people and the voice of that could be politicians, could be the mainstream media, could be tech owners, that kind of thing. Those are the three. But at the end of the day, we have a lot more people to be able to speak up, hopefully, in this country. Kate, what would you like to say about 2026 this year? What would you like to see? If you were President Kate Monroe, what would you want to get done? What would you want to get done this year?
Well, I want to, all the things that are going on, like with Venezuela. Venezuela is just one of many of those things we need to face. But what I don't want to see us do is go face all that horror and free people only for them to go essentially back into bondage. If we're going to go and clean up the rest of the world, we need to go do the whole job. So I'm all for what we did in Venezuela, even if we did it just for the oil. The byproduct of it was those people are now free. So it was a win-win. We'll probably do a better job managing those resources than anyone else in the world. So I'd like to see us manage these types of things. The other thing that I'd like to see us do is we did a good job closing the border, but now we need to get people on the other side of the border again. We need to continue this work of rounding people up, sorting them, vetting them, and shipping back to where they came from. When we get that done, that will be great. Number 3, voter fraud. Voter fraud, especially in California. You want to talk about a scoreboard? Our voter fraud is probably the worst in the country as well, like 100 to 1. That's how awful our voter fraud is in California. But across the nation, it shouldn't be that difficult, especially to vote in federal elections. It should not be that hard to count them. We should be able to close it out. You should go in and vote. You know, all this mail-in stuff we have in California, they're like, no, don't bother leaving your house. We'll go ahead and take that ballot and put it right in the shredder. That's not going to get counted. And even if it counts, it's like when you're playing Monopoly as a little kid and you're the bank, you're like, okay, one for me, one for you. You know, that's sort of what they do. Every time we bring in one, they bring in 2 votes. So if we can clean up the voter fraud, do a good job policing the rest of the world, the whole job of policing it, and getting our illegal migrants out, I think that will be a big step toward helping things around the world.
Well, and then also on top of that, to your point, that securing the elections, especially for the midterms coming up in November. So we're about to play that video, Kate, of you and the Riverside County Sheriff and the gubernatorial candidate, Chad Bianco, from Skid Row there in Los Angeles. What a video it is, you know, to be able to go there and actually talk with the people that are on Skid Row. It's pretty wild stuff. So Kate Monroe, the CEO of VetCom and conservative author and military veteran, thanks again for joining us on Right Side.
Thank you.
All right, it is 10:53. It's Wednesday, January 7th. We're getting ready for that White House press briefing. We have that video. It's about a 4-minute video, so we're going to take a look at that here in a second as we get ready for the D.C. live press briefing with Karoline Leavitt. And once again, today she'll be joined by RFK Jr. and Brooke Rollins, of course, Secretary of HHS and RFK Jr., the Secretary of Agriculture and Brooke Rollins for a MAHA announcement. So that's happening at around the top of the hour. As soon as we see that live feed, we'll take you there. In the meantime, let's go back to the fact that the Patriot and VetCom CEO owner Kate Monroe toured this part in Los Angeles called Skid Row with the Riverside County Sheriff and the California gubernatorial candidate Chad Bianco. So let's take a look at that video. As you're watching RSBN Live, I'm Matthew Alvarez. Let's take a look.
Cool. So it's like having a hoarder's house. Where do you start? Well, you have to first bucketize these people. They are not all in the same problem. Now, many of them are on drugs, but a lot of them have mental health problems. Some of them just got out of prison, like this beautiful guy that we talked to that cried with us. Some people are circumstantially homeless. You can't treat it all with the same wand, and you certainly can't treat it without any money.
Right. And I will tell you, personal experience, my history, what I did, and the same thing I'm going to do for California. And what is a perfect example of the failure of Skid Row and of Los Angeles politics and of state of California politics. I made Riverside County law enforcement better because it was not about treating crime. It was not about addressing crime. That's easy to say, we're going to address crime. We went way above and beyond that, and we addressed quality of life issues, because every single community's quality of life issue is different.
Yes.
Skid Row's quality of life issue is not the same as Beverly Hills.
No.
So why are we treating it the same? Why are we letting people that live in Beverly Hills decide what's best for Skid Row? And treating this is the failure of California, homelessness. We keep calling it homelessness. It has nothing to do with homeless here.
Yeah, no.
We walked around building after building after building of homes that are, the people are still living in tents.
Yeah.
This is not about homes. This is about drug addiction, alcohol addiction, mental health care, and the complete failure of us to address human beings in a compassionate manner to get them the help that they need. And one thing that struck me very strange that I haven't thought about from the lady that's working here is these people are they have been spent years and years and years of complete drug and alcohol abuse and homelessness, living on the street, that they don't remember what it is to live any other way.
Basic things.
So she is having to teach them that you wake up in the morning and brush your teeth and comb your hair. And if we are not going to address this issue like that, instead of saying we need more homes, because this is where I know where the money is gone. The money is gone in homes because the money went to the person that owns that building.
Yeah.
The money went to the person that remodeled that building, that takes care of the building. It's not going to the people. This industrial complex is enabling all of that we see on the street, the tents on the street, so all of these other people can make money. That's not what it's supposed to be for.
Yeah, I mean, and you and I were just talking about, if you took all the voters in California and you had them do this same walk, just like we have done, with different outlets today. It's easy to say what you believe until you have to go see it and walk in it and listen to it. Then you go, man, this is not the story I've been told.
Yeah.
And I just think that in this season, we need a strong leader on law enforcement, because without law enforcement, like my idea for the base camps, it will not exist. If there can't be a binary choice of hey, you can't camp here, you can't piss and shit here, you can't do drugs here, kill people, you can't do that here anymore. So you got to go to jail where you'll get clean, or you can go to this base camp and we're going to provide you a long enough runway and services to get clean, but you can't do it here.
Yeah.
When that works, when law enforcement, the police at the LAPD were saying to us today, we can't even do our job.
Yeah.
I feel like if you were the governor, you could flip law enforcement back on and suddenly these guys can go do what they were hired to do.
Yeah, I think that what has to happen, number one, me winning, because me winning puts this in the limelight.
Yeah.
Because me winning makes me down here, and I guess it's how I was raised, and that lady even said it. You do what you're going to say you're going to do.
Yep.
A lot of people say, well, how are you going to do that? It's like, it doesn't matter how I'm going to do it. I told you I'm going to do it, so I'm going to do it. That's how I was raised. It's called integrity. It's called doing the right thing. And so the embarrassing thing for me, for Los Angeles government, and yes, our mayor should be embarrassed. Prior mayors should be absolutely embarrassed, because Skid Row has been Skid Row for decades and decades and
it just
decades.
gets worse and worse.
We heard today from the people living in it and the people that are working in it that it is getting worse and worse and worse. And there has to be an absolute mission to fix it.
All right, so that is the Riverside County Sheriff, Chad Bianco, running for governor in California alongside the VetCom CEO, Kate Monroe, great patriot, two great patriots there, talking about homelessness in Los Angeles. Of course, we just interviewed Kate Monroe, just aired that video with you as it is approaching the top of the hour. So at 11 o'clock, scheduled is the White House press briefing with Karoline Leavitt. Joining her today for that MAHA announcement will be RFK Jr. and the Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins for, again, a Make America Healthy Again announcement. At 2:30, the president signs executive orders from the Oval Office. It's currently closed to the press. So that's what we're tracking so far today. If you're just joining us, this is RSBN Live. I'm Matthew Alvarez. We've been live since 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Had a lot of interviews, a lot of coverage since then, but if you're just joining us now, no worries. Glad you're with us as we get ready to go to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Let's go through a few sponsors before we do that, and as soon as we see that feed, we'll take you there. So let's go to All Family Pharmacy. You know, All Family Pharmacy is helping change how people access medications by removing many of the barriers found in traditional pharmacies. So Instead of waiting weeks for appointments or dealing with insurance complications, customers can order online, have their request reviewed by a licensed physician, and receive medications shipped directly to your door. So they offer a wide selection, including antibiotics, antivirals, Tamiflu, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, blood pressure medications, also methylene blue, NAD+, and more. So this model is especially helpful for people who value convenience and timely access to the medications they may need. So if you'd like to have an easier way to get your medications, all you have to do is visit allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You'll get that information right there on your screen. 10% off by using the RSBN 10 promo code. Let's also go to Monetary Gold before we go to DC, as it's 11 a.m. Wall Street veterans are sounding the alarm. Many now say gold could climb to more than $7,000 per troy ounce. Right now, it's north of $4,000. Silver upwards of $74 per troy ounce. And the experienced investors and economists and portfolio managers are tracking the indicators out there. They see the soaring national debt and the unchecked government spending and a dollar that's losing purchasing power by the day. So what's even more revealing is the behavior of central banks. They're actually trimming their exposure to U.S. Treasuries and increasing their gold reserves. And they're recognizing the pattern. If you'd like to recognize it as well, you can just give them a call. You see that number there on your screen, 888-617-7994, or go to rsbnforthegold.com. Two great sponsors here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. It's 11:01 Wednesday, January 7th, awaiting the live feed to the press briefing room. As soon as we get that, we'll be going there to D.C. Again, Karoline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, to hold a press briefing. And then we'll also hear from the Secretary of Health and Human Services, RFK Jr., and the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins. They're having a MAHA announcement today, a Make America Healthy Again announcement, along with that press briefing. And on top of that, of course, we'll be hearing from the fake news press and conservative media in the press briefing room as we listen in on this first White House press briefing of the new year. In the meantime, we're going to go to a video for those of you just joining us. Earlier this week, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, he administered the oath of enlistment to 30 young men and women in Newport News, Virginia. As we await that live feed, let's take a look at that video from the Department of War.
I'll tell you this, coming up here, I saw this strip mall here, and it reminded me of where I went to visit a recruiter when I was thinking about military service in my hometown of Forest Lake, Minnesota. I'm looking at a group of Americans here who did the very same thing because they want to be a part of something special, want to raise their right hand to defend the Constitution and the country. You know what we care about at the War Department? Are the real men and women who do the real work in uniform for the American people, the real 1%. According to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God. Congratulations. Give them a round of applause.
All right, that was on Monday in Newport News, Virginia, as it's 11:03. Thanks again for joining us. We're getting ready to go to D.C. as soon as we see that live feed for the White House press briefing. And some stories we're tracking right now in the 24/7 news cycle. The Department of Homeland Security posted a video, and also Kristi Noem, the Secretary of DHS, talking about this two pre-dawn operations that happened today. So the Coast Guard conducted back-to-back meticulously coordinated boarding of the two Ghost Fleet tanker ships. Now, this happened in the North Atlantic Sea and one in international waters near the Caribbean. Both vessels, the motor tanker Bella 1 and the motor tanker Sophia, were either last docked in Venezuela or en route. So what we'll do, as we await that White House press briefing, we'll throw to that video that has been making its rounds on social media. I'll be tracking some other stories as we watch this video here. Just a side note, there's no audio to this video, so it's just a video that has been released by the Department of Homeland Security. So let's take a look at that video as we await the White House press briefing at the White House. Okay, so that video that you were looking at there was from Kristi Noem, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, of course, looking at two pre-dawn operations that happened today. The Coast Guard conducted back-to-back, meticulously coordinated boarding of two Ghost Fleet tanker ships, one in the North Atlantic Sea and one in international waters near the Caribbean. So if you're looking for more context on that, all you have to do is go to Secretary Noem's X page, but we're hearing that those two tankers were either last docked in Venezuela or en route. So two oil tankers taken by, of course, the Coast Guard there. Video that we just showed you here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. It's Wednesday, January 7th. Getting close to that live feed for the White House press briefing. So we're watching together here, standing by at this moment. Also, the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, just posted a video. If we can get that on the screen there as soon as we can, we'll show that to you as we await this press briefing in Washington, D.C. All right, so we know a little later today, as we're awaiting that press briefing, that the president will sign executive orders at 2:30 this afternoon from the Oval Office. It's currently closed to the press, so if it does open, I'm sure we'll be live for that. If not, we'll definitely upload that kind of video that we would see from the White House, so we'll stand by for that. If you're just joining us right now, thanks so much for live streaming in on this Wednesday, January 7th. We've been live since 9:30 this morning. Talked about a lot of news stories, of course, interviewed a lot of great guests and great patriots across the country, from New York to LA to Florida, all over the place. So thank you so much for watching as we continue to stand by for this White House press briefing. And as soon as we get word that this new video from the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, is ready to go, we'll throw to that. In the meantime, okay, it sounds like it is ready. So let's go to that video just posted. Now, this video is about the announcement that's going to happen at the press briefing, according to Brooke Rollins. Let's take a look.
The center of making America healthy again is making American agriculture great again.
40% of children are overweight and obese. Cancers are up 79%. Autism rate is stunning. 40% of American adults are obese.
And it is largely because of our toxic, ultra-processed food system.
Make America healthy again. Our goal is to get toxins out of our environment, poisons out of our food supply, and keep our children healthy and strong.
We know the American food system is the safest in the world. And now we must do what it takes to make it the healthiest.
Every child in America that is hungry will have good food to feed them. And moving farm fresh produce as much as is possible into the schools and into these kids.
The SNAP program is designed to help those in need of assistance, not to hurt them. We are on track to sign multiples of SNAP waivers to get junk food out of our food stamp system.
Change to remove artificial colors from their products.
Huge companies
cut out synthetic food dyes.
It's just so great to be a partner in all of this.
It is a new day at USDA.
This announcement today on regenerative agriculture puts American farmers first as part of the solution.
These guidelines will prioritize whole, healthy, and nutritious foods.
We will make America healthy again, and what an honor it is to be a part of that. Well, thank you, sir.
All right, so you saw Brooke Rollins' video there. That's going to be some of the announcement that's going to be made, I guess, at this White House press briefing. So we'll see Karoline Leavitt. We'll see the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins. Also, we'll see the RFK Jr., the Secretary of HHS. In the meantime, let's go to country artist Neil McCoy. Hopefully he can turn his camera to the side if he'd like. He joins us once again to talk about the White House anniversary pledge. So country artist Neil McCoy, we just interviewed you yesterday, but we found out that you were at the White House recently. Can you talk to us about that?
Yes, sir. We went out early this morning so we could get out there before, I guess, all the shenanigans start that they go through every day over there. We just want to get out and get the Pledge of Allegiance said for finished up our 10th year in a row and made sure that we got that in before maybe you never know what's going to come on the news anymore.
Exactly. And if those of you watching, if you missed it, Country artist Neil McCoy that's joining us live right now. He, for 10 straight years, and every day, right, sir?
Yes, sir. Hadn't missed a day yet in 10 years.
10 years every day has said the Pledge of Allegiance. And he's got quite the following on Facebook of patriots across the country that look forward to this Pledge of Allegiance. Could you talk to us about what it's been like just for we the people that you were saying in some cases are seniors that you know aren't able to get out too much, but they love watching and starting their day with you?
They do. I've had numerous comments written to me just saying, I'm in a home or in a assisted living, and I just don't get to see people much anymore. Nobody comes to see me. They said, but I always know that you're going to come see me every day, because you're going to be on here, and I know you're going to be on here. So I thank you for not only starting my day right, but making my entire day by letting me say the Pledge of Allegiance with you. So it's very important that we keep trying it.
And that's awesome. So today, you got access inside the White House gates there. You had to go through all the Secret Service, and you were able to say the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, that flag, is it on the North Lawn? Is that the one that you were there with?
Yes, sir, that's exactly right. Right in front of the front door there where you go if you're going to the White House for a special occasion. And going in the main door, it's right outside of that.
That's pretty awesome stuff. I mean, talk about a way to celebrate saying the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag for 10 years straight, every single day. Now, did you put every one of them on Facebook every single day, or is there some that you just, you had to record it, or how'd that all go about?
No, I wish I could record it. Then that way I'd get to sleep in one day. But no, I go live and just try and encourage people to let them know when we're going to be on there. And sometimes it has to change. Like this morning, 10 a.m. Central Time is when I always say it when I'm visiting with folks. But today, since we were at the White House and we knew the day was going to be, they're going to have a lot to do over there, I went on about 6:30 Central Time. So I'm sure a lot of people may have missed it live, but they'll catch it on the replay, and they always talk it up. And I appreciate y'all reaching back out to me.
Yeah, definitely. You're going to have to please send us a video of that, or we'll check it out on Facebook. I'd love to air that, as it, it's just something that is quite patriotic. But my question to you, and again, those of you just joining us, country artist Neil McCoy joining us live right now. Why do you do the pledge every single day?
I just started about 10 years ago when early in 2016, the Democrats were fixing to try and figure out who their nominee was going to be, and the Republicans were doing the same. And I could see they were already started hammering on somebody maybe trying to make somebody else look bad so they would look better. And I just said, the one thing I can do is just go show my pledge and my allegiance to our flag and to our country, no matter what, because really it's not a matter of what side of the aisle you're on. It's just a matter that you still appreciate the country and the flag that represents this country. So I just started doing it, and it's gone gangbusters for about the past 10 years now straight.
Exactly. And one nation under God, liberty and justice for all, the things that we the people embrace and love across this land. Where are you from? Were you born in Texas?
Yes, sir. The great state of Texas.
Can you talk to us about the country music scene and patriotism and how that has blended so much for your career? I know you've traveled overseas and visited many of our service members during holiday times. That's, first of all, thank you for doing that. But what has that been like for you?
It's been fantastic, and all the USO tours you're talking about. Been on 15 of them all over the world, and it's just an opportunity for me to go over, and if we get a chance to entertain or sing to them, that's great, but sometimes we don't. Sometimes we just able to shake some hands and hug some necks and just tell them the country absolutely loves you. And especially we go over Christmas time, Thanksgiving time, when they're really missing home, and sometimes we miss it too, but we owe it to those guys and girls to just go over and visit with them. And my dad was Army, my grandfather was Army, so I lived by it, or come by it, I guess the right way. Although I never did sign up for anything, I still feel now that this is my way of serving our country by going to thank those guys and girls.
And then can you tell us about your background and your family, sure, and why the United States of America is so loved by you and the McCoys?
Well, my mom is not from here. She's from the Philippines. My father met her in the service, ended up marrying her, and I'm from 3 kids. I'm the youngest of 3, and our parents, especially my mom, not being from the United States of America, was always appreciative of the freedoms because she had something to compare it to. Over here, if you don't know many immigrants of any kind, then you really don't know the freedoms that we take for granted, they're freedoms. We don't even know that they're freedoms. It just comes to us. But when you have somebody on the other side that's saying, hey, if you were in the Philippines or you were here, you wouldn't have the opportunity to be doing that. So she made us, the thing that she wanted to teach us 3 kids was, you're going to know your God and love your country. And I think they did a pretty good job. We lost our mom and dad 6 and 7 years ago, but I think their image still lives on in our minds.
Exactly. And then the legacy of your family to have you do what you do as a professional country artist out there, and for patriotism. So Neil McCoy, thank you, sir, for joining us, and congratulations. And thank you again for saying the Pledge of Allegiance for 10 years straight, every day, capping it off today at the White House. I do have a photo of it here on my phone. This happened so quickly in the last second. So I'm going to send this over to our crew and see if we can pop that picture up. But in the meantime, thank you again, country artist Neil McCoy, for joining us here on Right Side.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. So great to see Neil McCoy once again here on Right Side Broadcasting Network, as we are standing by for this live feed from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Why don't we do this? We're going to take a quick commercial break. Even in the middle of the commercial, if the press briefing starts, we'll go right to it. But that gives me a second to get that picture and show it to you guys. So let's go to the commercial. I'm Matthew Alvarez here on Right Side. We'll see you in a second.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interviewed the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from Diamond and Silk Chit Chat Live. Look, don't forget to watch my show right here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. It's imperative that you do so, okay? Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door.
I could toss it.
All right. Dr. Carson, come on up. Thank you so much. Good morning and Happy New Year, everybody. It's great to see you. It's great to be with a very packed room. I'm sorry we kept you all very busy over the holiday break. And I know there is a lot of news out there today, both here at home and around the world. I will be happy to take all of your questions on all of that news. But first, I'm really honored to be standing up here today with esteemed members of the President's Cabinet and his health team to make an important announcement with respect to the President's domestic promise to make America healthy again as we kick off the new year. In less than a year in office, the President and his incredible MAHA team have made real progress on this front. Here are just a few of the significant MAHA achievements thus far. More than a dozen food manufacturers and trade associations have made commitments to remove artificial and petroleum-based food dyes from their products. The Trump administration took strong action to bar hospitals from performing dangerous, irreversible, life-altering transgender procedures on children. The Trump administration announced funding awards to states through the Rural Health Transformation Program, an unprecedented $50 billion investment established under President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill. The Trump administration has also worked with 18 states across the country to ban junk food purchases using SNAP benefits starting this year. And thank you for leading that effort, Secretary Rollins. Additionally, President Trump took historic action to secure most favored nation drug pricing and secured deals with major pharmaceutical companies to massively lower the cost of prescription drugs. And those effects are being implemented as we speak. Americans are going to continue to see the result of these incredible deals the president cut. And I know President Trump and this team behind me worked incredibly hard to lower those drug costs for Americans. On Monday, the CDC adopted common sense updates to America's childhood vaccination schedule based solely on the gold standard of science. This action empowers parents and physicians to make the best individualized decisions to protect our children, while also restoring much needed confidence in our public health system. And as a MAHA mom myself, I'm very grateful for that. So thank you, Secretary Kennedy. To build on this progress, the Trump administration is now updating federal nutrition standards and guidelines to ensure that Americans have the most accurate, data-driven information supported by science and hard facts, not special interests or partisan ideology. President Trump has tasked two of the great individuals behind me, USDA Secretary Rollins and HHS Secretary Kennedy, with collaborating on this vitally important project. And today they are here to officially unveil the 2025 to 2030 Dietary Guidelines for America. These new guidelines are informed by the best and most reliable research on health and nutrition, particularly as it relates to the role of our diets and the prevalence of chronic disease in the country. They are also These guidelines are easy to read and understand, so every American, young and old, can access this information that literally has the power to change lives. But these are not just an updated guideline. These are the foundation to all federal food programs in our country. These new guidelines are going to update the food that is served to America's children in our public schools, to the plates that are served to our great men in uniform in our military, our veterans, and the food that they are consuming at the VA. And these new guidelines are also going to impact nutritional programs for the needy in our country, such as WIC and Head Start. Unfortunately, for decades, federal dollars has promoted low-quality, highly processed foods that lead to scores of long-term health issues, which means Americans have gone broke because of these health issues. Faulty dietary guidelines of the past stacked the deck against healthy eating and food options for everyday American families, which has fueled the chronic disease epidemic and jacked up the healthcare costs of households across the country. This failed approach in our public health system ends today. When these guidelines are followed, Americans will be saving themselves thousands of dollars. If we want to cut healthcare costs in our country, we must become a healthier country. According to the CEA, poor diet is the root cause of obesity, which accounts for $400 billion in medical spending each year. A healthier America will lead to a more affordable America. The new dietary guidelines from the Trump administration will ensure federal dollars go to real food to improve public health and therefore save the American people their hard-earned cash over the course of their lives. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Secretary Kennedy. The great people behind me will give remarks, and then we'll get into Q&A for the officials that are here on this specific topic. They will leave because they're all very busy people, and then I will open it up to Q&A with the rest of you on the rest of the news in the world. So thank you, and we'll start with Secretary Kennedy.
Thank you, Karoline.
Thank you.
Today marks a decisive change in federal nutrition policy, made possible by President Trump's leadership and the work of MAHA moms and public health advocates who demanded reform. Today, in accordance with President Trump's directive, Brooke and I will release the dietary guidelines for Americans 2025 to 2030, the most significant reset of federal nutrition policy in history. These guidelines replace corporate-driven assumptions with common sense goals and gold standard scientific integrity. These new guidelines will revolutionize our nation's food culture and make America healthy again. For decades, Americans have grown sicker while healthcare costs have soared. The reason is clear. The hard truth is that our government has been lying to us to protect corporate profit-taking, telling us that these food-like substances were beneficial to public health.
Federal policy promoted and subsidized highly processed foods and refined carbohydrates and turned a blind eye to the disastrous consequences. Today, the lies stop. The new guidelines recognize that whole, nutrient-dense food is the most effective path to better health and lower healthcare costs. Protein and healthy fats are essential and were wrongly discouraged in prior dietary guidelines. We are ending the war on saturated fats. Diets rich in vegetables and fruits reduce disease risk more effectively than many drugs. Whole grains outperform refined carbohydrates. Added sugars, especially sugar-sweetened beverages, drive metabolic disease, and today our government declares war on added sugar. Highly processed foods loaded with additives, added sugar, and excess salt damage health and should be avoided. As Secretary of Health and Human Services, my message is clear: eat real food. Nothing matters more for healthcare outcomes, economic productivity, military readiness, and fiscal stability. The dietary guidelines shape dozens of federal feeding programs, including Head Start. These standards affect 45 million school lunches every day, meals for 1.3 million active duty service members, and food served to 9 million veterans in VA hospitals. Today begins the work of aligning those programs with affordable, whole, nutrient-dense food. Implementation requires coordination across the government. I'm working with many of my fellow cabinet secretaries to deliver results. I want to thank Bobby Mukamala, thank you very much, who is the president of the American Medical Association, for committing to mobilize the medical community on nutrition. And I thank also the American Academy of Pediatrics for partnering on this effort. I also look forward to working with Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and Dr. Marty McCary to fund and prioritize rigorous nutrition research at the NIH and at the FDA. The stakes are measurable and severe. A Johns Hopkins analysis estimates that 48% of every federal taxpayer dollar now goes to healthcare. The CDC reports that 90% of healthcare spending treats chronic disease. That means that 40%, 40 cents of every dollar that taxpayers pay in this country is going to treat diseases that could be averted through good food. The United States has the highest obesity and type 2 diabetes rate in the developed world. We spend 3 times more per capita than the European Union on healthcare, yet our life expectancy is 5 years lower, largely due to diet-related chronic disease. Our childhood obesity rate is 5 times higher than countries like France. 1/3 of U.S. teens have prediabetes, over 35% are overweight or obese, and 20% of young adults have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. 77% of military-aged Americans are ineligible for military service because of diet-related conditions. If a foreign adversary sought to destroy the health of our children, to cripple our economy, to weaken our national security, there would be no better strategy than to addict us to ultra-processed foods. It's shocking that our own government helped to drive these cataclysmic changes in our diet. The damage is real, it is preventable, and President Trump has ordered it to end. If the United States reduced obesity, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and Alzheimer's to Japanese levels, we would save approximately $600 billion a year. About 50% of Medicare's projected long-term deficit, or $5,000 per family annually. Current policy worsens the problem. 42 million Americans rely on SNAP, where common purchases include sugary drinks, candy, and chips. 78% of SNAP recipients are enrolled in Medicaid, and 90% of Medicaid spending goes to chronic disease. These incentives raise healthcare costs and undermine health. This must change. The new framework centers on protein and healthy fats, vegetables, fruits, and whole grains. And you can see the food pyramid here. It's upside down, a lot of you will say. But it was actually upside down before, and we just righted it. For the first time, the dietary guidelines directly address ultra-processed foods and set firm sugar limits in federal procurement, driving a significant reduction in added sugar in school meals. I want to thank President Trump for his leadership and the partners committed to ensuring that federal food dollars support real food and better health. Thank you. And I want to introduce my partner and a friend, Brooke Rollins, who was an extraordinary collaborator on this.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. What a honor to be here. I think this is Karoline's first press conference back, and what a great way to start the new year, 2026. I want to thank Secretary Kennedy. Your commitment to the well-being of Americans is such a blessing to this nation. We have been working on these new dietary guidelines really since almost day one. Bobby and I were voted on the same day and sworn in on the same day. So I think the partnership from minute one has been real and extraordinary. As Secretary Kennedy mentioned, America is in the middle of the worst chronic health crisis in our nation's history. Over 40% of the roughly 73 million children in the United States have at least one chronic health condition, and nearly 90% of healthcare spending goes toward treating people with chronic disease. Secretary Kennedy mentioned that, but it is really important to keep underscoring that fact. This crisis is unacceptable. It prevents Americans from living healthy and happy lives. And for decades under both Republicans and Democrats, federal incentives have promoted low quality, highly processed foods and pharmaceutical interventions instead of prevention. As a result, nutrient-dense whole foods grown by America's farmers and ranchers have been increasingly displaced. The Trump administration is acutely aware of this danger, and today this announcement is making a major step in doing something about it. Thankfully, the solution is simple and should be non-controversial: eat real food. This is the main message of the new Dietary Guidelines for Americans 2025 to 2030, which encourage households and schools to prioritize whole, nutrient-dense foods. That means more protein, more dairy, more healthy fats, more whole grains, more fruits and vegetables, whether they are fresh, frozen, canned, or dried. We are finally putting real food back at the center of the American diet. Real food that nourishes the body, restores health, fuels energy, and builds strength. This pivot also leans into the abundant, affordable, and healthy food supply already available from America's incredible farmers and ranchers. By making milk, raising cattle, and growing wholesome fruits, vegetables, and grains, they hold the key to solving our national health crisis. And President Trump is mobilizing government to ensure families across America have greater access to these healthy foods. In the past 12 months, inflation has slowed and wages have risen for the first time in 5 years. Under President Trump's leadership, prices for everyday staples are declining, and more help is on the way. Recent data show that fruits, vegetables, dairy, and proteins, including eggs, pork, and ground beef, are becoming even more affordable every day for our American people. American households enjoy the most affordable and abundant food in the world, and today's release only reinforces that reality. A healthy meal is within reach for all American families. These new dietary guidelines are a framework which is meant to be customized to meet the needs, the preferences, and the financial status of all American families. For example, a meal including such items as pork, or eggs, or whole milk, or cheese, tomatoes, other fresh and frozen fruits and vegetables, whole grain bread, corn tortilla can cost today right around $3 for that meal. $3. And soon USDA will finalize our stocking standards, which means that those businesses in America that take the SNAP benefit, what they are required to stock in order to take that benefit, by the way, that's almost 250,000 retailers across America, that very soon we will be finalizing that rule that will mandate all 250,000 retailers in America double the type of staple foods that they provide for America's SNAP households. This means healthier options will be in reach for all American families, regardless of circumstance, at levels never seen before in our country. These dietary guidelines are foundational to so many USDA programs, and their introduction marks the first step in connecting America's schools and dinner plates to the best of American agriculture. Make no mistake, under President Trump's leadership, we are restoring common sense, we are restoring scientific integrity, and we are restoring accountability to federal food and health policy. The new guidelines are all about putting the well-being of Americans first, exactly where it should have been all along. This is the foundation that will make America healthy again, not just for those of us alive today, but for our children and our children's children and those coming behind. I want to end by saying God bless American families, God bless the American farmer and rancher, and God bless America. What an honor now to introduce another great partner in this incredible work, and that is Dr. Mehmet Oz. Thank you.
Congratulations to Secretary Rollins, Secretary Kennedy, and do want to express my appreciation for what the President has done overall to increase the affordability of health care. The biggest accomplishment perhaps for the health system ability to drop down prices last year was the most favored nation drug pricing that Karoline mentioned. These are incredibly effective at reducing the costs, for example, of what the President calls the fat shot, the Ozempic, GLP-1s category of medications. We dropped them dramatically. But the best way to reduce drug spend in America is to not need the drugs in the first place. What you're hearing today with these dietary guideline adjustments are going to be massively effective, and not just dropping the need for us to buy these weight loss drugs, but buy these expensive drugs for autoimmune problems. We have evidence that food is medicine when it comes to conditions as varied as mental health issues from Alzheimer's and depression to fundamental realities of how children learn in school. So the question then becomes, what is this actually going to do in dollars and cents? And I had the group at CMS run some numbers for us to try to give you concrete assessments of how much this will drop the spend that the federal taxpayer must make for Medicare and Medicaid. And I'm more optimistic today than ever that we can address the fast rising rate of healthcare expenses in America because of movements like this. Right now, we're increasing health expenditures in America at roughly twice the rate of the GDP growth. We will correct that if we can get America to be healthier, because you can't be a wealthy nation without being a healthy nation. So 2 numbers for you to remember. The first is $30 billion. Why? 30% of healthcare costs are directly attributable to obesity. I'm not talking about indirect associated expenses, which are also present, but a very conservative number, 30%, are directly attributed to obesity. That's about $300 billion a year for just Medicare, If we were to affect obesity by 10%, which is an incredibly conservative and justifiable assumption that has been borne out in evidence-based dietary experiments and trials, just that alone is $30 billion of reduction of expenses for Medicare. That's also obviously correlated with Medicaid reduction in spending. In Medicaid, it's a different opportunity because in Medicaid, we educate children. 53% of children in America are covered by Medicaid or CHIP. And we have programs to teach kids and their parents what to eat, and how to make these dietary guidelines that Secretary Rollins, Secretary Kennedy have crafted with their teams into practice. It will dramatically change the natural history of how children are able to participate in life. But let me give you one last number. If we're able to get the average American, who today retires on average at age 61, get them just to work 1 year longer, because they feel so vital, so strong, so bullish about their future, because they're feeding their bodies nutrients that are essential to their high-functioning productivity, we will increase the overall GDP of our nation by trillions of dollars. So we will reduce healthcare expenses. At the same time, we jazz up the U.S. economy with trillions of dollars created by the productivity of American workers. God bless you both for making the DGA feasible and making it perhaps the wisest investment we could make in our communities. Marty Makary is one of my closest friends, the powerful leader of the FDA who's been taking brave steps along the line and has additional insights.
Thanks. Thank you, Dr. Oz. Today marks the beginning of the end of an era of medical dogma on nutrition. For decades, we've been fed a corrupt food pyramid that has had a myopic focus on demonizing natural, healthy, saturated fats, telling you not to eat eggs and steak, and ignoring a giant blind spot: refined carbohydrates, added sugars, ultra-processed food. This study in JAMA now shows that 60% to 70% of kids are getting their calories from ultra-processed foods. That's an epidemic. We now have a generation of kids addicted to refined carbohydrates, low in protein. They are literally nitrogen negative because we've used old flawed studies that used urine nitrogen to estimate body protein metabolism, and they missed the mark. The old guidelines had such a low protein recommendation that we are increasing that by 50 to 100%. Kids need protein. The old protein guidelines were to prevent starvation and withering away. These new protein guidelines are designed for American kids to thrive, and they're based on science, not on dogma. We have 40% of our kids now with a chronic disease. It is not their fault. This is something that is the result of bad advice from the government and a medical establishment that for decades peddled research from a flawed 1960s model. Today, we are setting the record straight. This is not a willpower problem of our nation's kids. This is something adults have done to kids, and we're going to fix it. And so, as Dr. Oz said, the best way to lower drug prices is for people to stop taking drugs they don't need. We are going to finally address the root causes of our broken healthcare system: insulin resistance and general body inflammation, advanced by the protein-poor, micronutrient-poor, ultra-processed, refined carbohydrate diet that kids are addicted to today. And so, on behalf of the Food and Drug Administration, we are proud to be a part of this. We are grateful to be contributing to this work. Thank you, Secretary Rollins. Thank you, Kyle Diamantis, the best deputy commissioner for food at the FDA the agency has ever had. This is a historic day in America. Thank you, Karoline.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope everyone's inspired to go eat a salad for lunch after this briefing. If anybody has questions on this topic, we will take a few and then we'll get into the topic. We'll start with our new media seat. If you have a question on this topic today, Jamie Franklin, she comes from the Conservator. Why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, first of all, Karoline, congratulations on your pregnancy. We're so excited for you.
Thank you.
MAHA moms across the country, including myself, are just so excited by what this administration is doing to make our kids healthy again. But, you know, we do have concerns when it comes to these blue states pushing back on a lot of progress that we're making as an administration. And particularly, we're really excited that you guys revised and streamlined this vaccine schedule. However, what we have seen is that these blue states, whether it be, you know, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, or pushing back on immigration, they continue to stop your guys' progress. So what has been the response from these blue states? Because as MAHA moms enrolling our kids in school, this is a big issue, and we celebrate what you guys are doing, but we want to have it, you know, even in the blue states as well.
I mean, my hope is that we only released these earlier, 2 days earlier. I'm sorry.
Duck is also high in protein.
That's an interesting.
Duck is a good thing to eat, everybody.
They only released the new vaccine schedule 2 days ago. The vaccine schedule, there's nothing compulsory in it. Everybody, I've always promised, I'm not going to take people's vaccines away from them. People who want to get vaccines, everybody who wants them can get all of the vaccines that were on the old schedule. They will all be paid for by the Vaccines for Children program or for the insurance the same as before. We release guidelines that we think are optimal to public health. They're the same core vaccines that are required by the European community. And those nations all have much better health outcomes than we do. And they're based on their best science and also on their conviction that when you put too many vaccines on the program, it actually reduces compliance. It reduces uptake. And so we want to maximize the uptake of vaccines by making sure that Americans know that we are making recommendations that are science-based, that are common sense, that are grounded in science. And right now, that's the best science that we have. And again, there's 3 categories of vaccine. One is the core schedule, which resembles the European countries. The second is for people who have vulnerabilities, for high risk, and that doesn't change at all. And then the third is shared decision making, which any vaccine that was on the old schedule, you can continue to get. So people will make their own choices, and that's what democracy is about.
I asked the boss, Karoline, for permission to add a little bit to this because I think it's really important. And by the way, Jamie, what a superstar you are. It's so fun to see you in this seat, Jamie Franklin. The blue state question is a really important one. And for those of us that are running agencies with these programs, I mean, I've talked to a lot of you already about how we have 22 blue states that won't give us their SNAP data so that we can figure out and ensure that those who really need these programs are actually getting these programs. Clearly, you all have been writing about Minnesota. California's next. We're looking at New York, some other states. The amount of fraud in all of these programs is absolutely stunning. And the challenge is, I mean, from Medicaid, et cetera, I know, Dr. Oz, you've talked a lot about that. This is a significant problem. And I think who's really harmed in all of this conversation and when these blue states aren't partnering with us to try to do this right is we say blue states and red states, but in those states, there are all kinds of our citizenry and that aren't all Democrat or aren't all Republican. We had a poll that just came out that had about 85% of all Americans believe that states should turn their data over on SNAP so that we can figure out where the fraud is and ensure these programs are going where they need to go. So my request of these blue states and these blue state governors is partner with us. Let us figure out how to do this better. Let us make sure that whether it's the vaccine schedule or the SNAP program or the Medicaid program or the child care program, that we are doing everything we can to protect every tax dollar, but to also ensure those who need it the most vulnerable in our society, are getting the programs they need versus those who A, are not even supposed to be here, or B, are cheating the system.
Jeff.
Thanks, Caroline. One of the changes that was made had to do with alcohol. Secretary Kennedy or Dr. Oz, could you explain the science behind the new language on not saying 2 drinks for men and 1 drink for a woman every day would be healthy, and whether or not the industry had an impact on the language of moderation versus just saying alcohol is not healthy and you shouldn't drink it?
So alcohol is a social lubricant that brings people together. In the best case scenario, I don't think you should drink alcohol, but it does allow people an excuse to bond and socialize, and there's probably nothing healthier than having a good time with friends in a safe way. If you look at the blue zones, for example, around the world where people live the longest, alcohol is sometimes part of their diet. Again, small amounts, taken very judiciously, and usually in a celebratory fashion. So there is alcohol on these dietary guidelines, but the implication is don't have it for breakfast. Right, this should be something done in a small amount with hopefully some kind of an event that might have alcohol added. But the general move away from 2 glasses of men, 1 glass of women, there was never really good data to support that quantity of alcohol consumption. That data was probably primarily confused with broader data about social connectiveness.
Take a couple more. John?
Thanks a lot, Caroline. Secretary Rollins, I'm curious about with these guidelines. They're not mandates, they're guidelines. What are the practical effects of these guidelines on public schools all across the country?
Well, today begins thank you, John. It's good to see you. Today begins the first day now in a recalibration of the rules, whether it's school lunches, whether it's the SNAP program, whether it's that veterans were mentioned, our prison system, that now we begin the process of implementing and redrafting the rules to reflect what this new dietary guidelines for Americans actually is doing to our food system. So there is a lot of work to do. Nothing changes overnight, but as I think we've proven, this administration moves very, very quickly on all fronts, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and so you'll begin to see some real changes coming very soon. As everyone is aware, for many of our most vulnerable in the margins in our communities, the school lunch is often the best place for our children to get the healthiest meal. Hopefully with stocking standards and reworking SNAP and the SNAP waivers we've done, that begins to change too. But right now, that is going to be the single most important, from my perspective, move forward, is the school lunches and making sure that we're getting the right amount, the best amount, and most nutrient-dense foods into the schools. Thank you.
You also mentioned Secretary Rollins' cost when you had your remarks a little bit earlier. Is eating healthier more cost effective? Is it cheaper than just having a diet of processed foods?
I had a whole chart to show you, but left it in the back, unfortunately, that yes, indeed, that eating healthy, for the most part, we've got 100 simulations, is actually less expensive. The challenge is the access to those healthy foods, especially in parts of America where they have food deserts. They don't have a H-E-B or a Kroger or a Central Market. These are all Texan grocery stores, but whatever similar across the country. But that is why these stocking standards in SNAP are so important. So if you have a economically challenged family, and the only place they're getting their food is the 7-Eleven. We have a longer term important policy priority, and that is getting grocery stores into these lower margin communities. But for now, requiring those retailers, those 250,000 retailers across America, to double their stocking of healthier foods. That will allow us to immediately get these better foods into all communities, but especially the most vulnerable. Thank you, John.
Let me just add something to that. Brooke and I are working on a program. Affordability is the priority for the president. And we know we have to make it easy and accessible for healthy foods for every American. And we believe we can do that. We think affordable food is within reach of every American family. We are working on a education and information program that will allow American families all over the country to come onto our website and find the healthiest foods at the lowest cost for themselves. I'd also just add this. The idea that a cheap meal made of processed food is cheap is an illusion, because you're paying for it on the back end. You're paying for it with diabetes, with obesity, with illness. And if you internalize that cost of the meal, it would be a tiny fraction of the long-term cost of eating bad food.
So we'll take one more in the white blazer. Thank you.
Caroline. Secretary Kennedy, you mentioned healthy fats, but also ending the war on saturated fats. Can you clarify how much saturated fats Americans should be consuming?
I'm going to let Marty take that, since he wrote a book about it.
Look, the old dogma in the 1960s, when Eisenhower had his heart attack and Ancel Keys said it was the saturated fat, that's never been substantiated. And so that flawed research has become dogma over the years, and eventually the conversation was sidelined. In this new guidance, we are telling young people, kids, schools, you don't need to tiptoe around fat and dairy. You don't need to push low-fat milk to kids. And we are maintaining the 10% of calories as saturated fat in the guidance. The real issue is protein. The fact that 60 to 70% of the calories of kids today in America is ultra-processed food. These are the issues that have become giant blind spots where we're now putting attention. And we hope that there are conversations in every school board in America, in every church and synagogue and house of worship, every home in America will now have conversations. We've got to talk about school lunch programs, not just putting 6-year-olds on Ozempic. Food can be curative. We've got to talk about the microbiome and fiber and healthy whole grains and the good soil that food comes from, and the healthy, clean waters and good farming techniques. So that's the focus of this guidance. Thank you.
Great.
Some of you may be wondering why Dr. Carson is here. He is our National Nutrition Advisor working alongside Secretary Kennedy, and he's played a big role in this effort. So I want to thank you so much, Dr. Carson, for being here today. And thank all of you for being here today. I know you're all very busy people, and these people have a lot of questions on things other than diet, I'm sure. So I'm going to get to work, and thank you guys so much for coming.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All righty. Great. Does anyone have any questions? Rachel, why don't you start?
Thank you, Caroline. The president has been adamant that he is now in charge of Venezuela, but Delcy Rodriguez said the government of Venezuela runs her country, no one else, saying, quote, there's no external agent governing Venezuela. So which one is it?
Let me just be very clear. This is the first time that I've addressed Venezuela from the podium since being back and since the historic and incredibly successful military operation, law enforcement operation conducted by our United States military that you all saw and the world witnessed last week. The skill, the might of the United States military and our country under the leadership of this president is on full display to the rest of the world. And let's just set the record straight. There isn't another military in the world who could have pulled off this operation. There is not another president in the world or in our nation's history who had the courage to authorize such a mission. And I think the world has taken notice that America is truly back. With respect to Venezuela, the Trump administration, led by Secretary Rubio, the vice president, and the president's entire national security team, is in close correspondence with the interim authorities in Venezuela. We obviously have maximum leverage over the interim authorities in Venezuela right now, and the president has made it very clear that this is a country within the United States, the Western Hemisphere, close by the United States, that is no longer going to be sending illegal drugs to the United States of America. It's no longer going to be sending and trafficking illegal people and criminal cartels to kill American citizens as they have in the past. And the president is fully deploying his peace through strength foreign policy agenda. So we're continuing to be in close coordination with the interim authorities, and their decisions are going to continue to be dictated by the United States of America.
Just one follow-up, when you talk about that leverage there, has the Venezuelan government fully committed to turning over its oil to the United States indefinitely, and what happens if they do not?
Well, as you saw, the president announced last night, this was a deal. This was a deal made by the president and his team with the Venezuelan interim authorities. This will benefit both the American people and the Venezuelan people. And Secretary Wright and the Department of Energy are working with the interim authorities and also with the private oil industry to execute on this historic energy deal. That's not only good for the United States, but it's also going to revive the prosperity, the safety, the security of both the United States and Venezuela as well. Ed.
Following up on the oil part of this, the 30 to 50 million barrels of oil, how exactly is that going to work? You're getting it out of Venezuela into the United States?
Yes.
And then what?
That's exactly right. So as you know, Ed, as the president announced last night, this was the sanctioned oil that was basically just sitting in barrels, sitting on ships because of the effective quarantine of the United States of America. And the interim authorities have agreed to release that oil to the United States, so it will be arriving here at home very soon. The United States government has already begun marketing Venezuelan crude oil in the global marketplace for the benefit of the United States, engaged the world's leading commodity marketers, key banks to execute and provide financial support for these crude oil and crude product sales. All proceeds from the sale of Venezuelan crude oil and products will first settle in U.S.-controlled accounts at globally recognized banks to guarantee the legitimacy and integrity of the ultimate distribution of proceeds, and those funds will be dispersed for the benefit of the American people and the Venezuelan people at the discretion of the United States government.
It sounds like it requires a lot of private sector engagement and agreement
And
from the oil industry and the banking industry. Do you have that yet?
There's a lot of private sector engagement that's happening right now. As you know, Secretary Wright, our energy secretary who's heading up this big project, is in Florida today meeting with some of these oil executives. And as we confirmed earlier, they will also be at the White House later this week. So they are absolutely eager to invest. They're eager about these opportunities. And Secretary Wright is a very well knowledgeable guy when it comes to oil and energy, and he's the perfect man for the job.
Another corner of the world,
Sure.
real quick on
Go
Iran.
ahead. Go ahead.
So just to follow up on the oil, 30 to 50 million barrels is an initial tranche, if you will, and then what happens after that? What
I won't get ahead of the plans that the president and his team are currently speaking with the interim authorities about, but rest assured, there is a long-term plan here. Secretary Rubio and the entire team are working diligently on it, and this is just sort of the first action that you all are seeing. Ed.
Thanks, Caroline. So in order to get these oil companies to invest billions in Venezuela, how will the U.S. reassure that their workers will be safe in Venezuela? Could there be troops involved?
At this point in time, as you know, there are no troops on the ground in Venezuela. The president, of course, reserves the right to use the United States military if necessary. It's not something he wants to do. Diplomacy is always the first option, as you saw. He tried that with Nicolas Maduro, but unfortunately, he was an illegitimate dictator and an unserious person. And so President Trump authorized this law enforcement operation, and now Nicolas Maduro is sitting in a prison cell in New York. So certainly the president is going to do what's in the best interests of the American people, and that includes workers from our energy and oil industry as well.
With that meeting tomorrow, what is the message the president is going to give to the oil executives, and what does he want to hear?
Well, the meeting is on Friday, and it's just a meeting to discuss, obviously, the immense opportunity that is before these oil companies right now. Stephen.
Caroline, and congratulations again.
Thank you.
The New Yorker had a story yesterday on the vice president, and it questioned his, quote, notable absence on Venezuela. And the subheadline asked, was the vice president's exclusion from the operation in Venezuela an expression of his anti-interventionist ideology or political calculation? Would you be able to discuss the vice president's role in Venezuela policy?
I did see that report in the New Yorker, and quite frankly, I laughed out loud because it's very clear it's a fake report that's trying to sow distrust and division amongst the president and his team. Let me just be very clear. The vice president has been involved in all policy. He is the right-hand man of the president on all policy matters, including Venezuela policy. He was, of course, read in and deeply involved in this operation from the very beginning. And he was present on the night of the operation via secure communication at a different location as to not damage the operational secrecy of this mission that was so incredibly important to ensure that this mission could be carried out successfully without endangering our troops. Sure.
The U.S. seized a tanker recently. Russia specifically asked the United States not to seize that tanker. Does this action risk a larger conflict with Russia?
I believe you're referring to the Bella 1 tanker that was seized this morning. The Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security, in coordination with the Department of War, did announce that seizure this morning for violations of U.S. sanctions. I've spoken about the enforcement of our sanctions policy at the podium prior to the new year, and this administration is going to fully enforce the sanction policy of the United States. The vessel this morning was seized in the North Atlantic pursuant to a warrant issued by a U.S. federal court after being tracked, and this was a Venezuelan shadow fleet vessel that has transported sanctioned oil, and the United States of America, under this president, is not going to tolerate that. I would also just add the vessel had a judicial seizure order, and the crew, so that means the crew is now subject to prosecution for any applicable violation of federal law, and they will be brought to the United States for such prosecution if necessary. Kelly.
Caroline, Happy New Year to you.
Thank you. You too.
I'd like to talk to you about a couple of things real quickly. The first question about the Venezuelan people. As you know, there's some 8 million Venezuelans here, some of them celebrating in the streets. There are Venezuelans on the ground who are concerned about their safety. What does the Trump administration, what is it doing to actually help people in Venezuela understand that they will be secure throughout this transition?
I think the fact that this president actually followed through on the long-held promise of the United States of America, the bipartisan promise to take down the illegitimate Maduro regime, should give assurance to the Venezuelan people and also Venezuelan Americans who fled this communist regime for a better life here at home, that this is a president who is serious about taking down illegitimate regimes and who is also serious about securing the security of the United States of America, including the Venezuelan American people. And I would just add that this is something that not just Republicans and President Trump have talked about for a very long time, but it is also something that Democrats have advocated for. In 2020, Chuck Schumer said that that at the time, President Trump had not brought an end to the Maduro regime. The Maduro regime is more powerful today and more entrenched today than it was when the president began. Now you hear Chuck Schumer out there saying this is reckless. The American people and the Venezuelan people should be in fear. But this is something that Chuck Schumer has long advocated for. Senator Chris Van Hollen, same thing, had said that the United States is going to use its leverage and influence to push for negotiations to transition to the truly elected leader. This was under President Biden. We know Maduro and his cronies don't want to go quietly into the night. The U.S. needs to work to ratchet up the pressure. Now, Senator Holland says it's an illegal act of war to get rid of Nicolas Maduro. So the hypocrisy is really astounding here, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to point it out, Kayla. Sorry, go ahead. Yes.
So there are reports that the administration is demanding that Venezuela cut ties with China, Russia, Iran, and Cuba. Can you confirm?
I'm sorry?
Reports that the administration has essentially demanded that Venezuela cut ties with China, Russia, Iran, and Cuba. Can you confirm that?
Well, those alleged demands were made in a classified briefing by Secretary Rubio, and I know that there's a lot of leaks coming out of these classified briefings, so I'm not going to confirm or deny or get into what the Secretary has said in classified settings to members of Congress. But I think that the administration has made it quite clear to the interim authorities in Venezuela that this is the Western Hemisphere, and American dominance is going to continue under this president.
If I could just ask, there have also been reports that the U.S. could potentially buy Greenland as one potential option on the table. What would such an offer look like? Is there anything monetarily you could provide, any details there?
Well, that's something that's currently being actively discussed by the president and his national security team. And I would point out that the acquisition of Greenland by the United States is not a new idea. This is something that presidents dating back to the 1800s have said is advantageous for America's national security. The president has been very open and clear with all of you and with the world that he views it in the best interest of the United States to deter Russian and Chinese aggression in the Arctic region. And so that's why his team is currently talking about what a potential purchase would look like. Jackie.
Karoline, just following up on Greenland, why not rule out taking it by military force?
I know that past presidents and past leaders have often ruled things out. They've often been very open about ruling things in and basically broadcasting their foreign policy strategy to the rest of the world, not just to our allies, but most egregiously to our adversaries. That's not something this president does. All options are always on the table for President Trump as he examines what's in the best interest of the United States. But I will just say that the president's first option always has been diplomacy. Again, look at Venezuela. He tried ardently to strike a good deal with Nicolas Maduro, and he told him, I will use the United States military and you will not like it if you don't take such a deal. And look at what happened. With respect to Iran, the president said the same thing, right? He tried to have serious interest in a deal with the Iranian regime with respect to their nuclear capabilities. They were not interested, and so Operation Midnight Hammer happened, which was another remarkable military success under the leadership of this commander-in-chief. So the president keeps his options open, but diplomacy is always the first.
Quickly, just one additional follow-up on that. Does the president recognize Denmark's ownership as part of the kingdom? Because there have been some Republican senators questioning the claim that Denmark has to Greenland. Is the president in that camp with them, questioning the legality of
I have not heard him question it personally, but you're welcome to ask him yourself next time you have the chance.
Sanctions are being lifted for Venezuela. We got to lift some sanctions to let the oil come in. Can you talk about that just very briefly?
Yes, so the U.S. is selectively rolling back sanctions to enable the transport and the sale of Venezuelan crude and oil products to the global markets, yes.
Karoline.
Annie.
Thank you. There are some reports from Venezuela that the country's leaders are cracking down on the population, specifically suppressing public expression of support for Maduro's ouster. Is that kind of behavior consistent with what the president wants to see, how the president wants to see the leaders take on the population?
It would not be consistent, and I'll let the president's national security team speak further on that. I know they are well aware and tracking. Kelly.
Two questions. One, on the seized vessels, the Bella, the Sophia, can you tell us where they're headed, what happens to any existing cargo, and you referenced personnel but potentially facing prosecution. That's one thing I'd like to follow on. And then
on the Bella.
Yes, okay. And on Annie's question, if I could also ask, does the administration believe that the interim regime should release all political dissidents and prisoners and return detained Americans?
That's not a question that I've personally spoken about to the president with, so I will let him answer that question. I don't want to make new policy at this podium today with respect to Venezuela. With respect to the two ships that you mentioned, I spoke with you about the Bella One. There was another vessel this morning, the Sophia, that in coordination with the Department of War, the Department of Homeland Security apprehended it. This is a stateless, sanctioned, dark fleet motor tanker, and this occurred without incident. This vessel was operating in international waters and conducting illicit activities in the Caribbean Sea. The U.S. Coast Guard is escorting the Sophia to the United States for final disposition. To answer your question, Kelly, directly, this was through Operation Southern Spear. The Department of War is unwavering in its mission to crush illicit activity in the Western Hemisphere. And as the President has repeatedly stated, we're going to defend our homeland and restore security and strength across the Americas. Dasha, go.
Caroline, thank you and Happy New Year.
Thanks, you too.
Two questions, one on Venezuela, one on Greenland. You've repeatedly at the podium called the current leadership in Venezuela interim leadership. There are Republicans and Democrats alike that say they want to see elections in Venezuela. The president has said it's too soon to do that right now, but is there a timeline for elections in Venezuela? Is he committed to seeing that this year, for example?
You just said the president has answered that question, so I will reiterate what the president has said a few times now to all of you, which is that it's too premature and too early to dictate a timetable for elections in Venezuela right now.
Caroline, you just talked to Jackie about diplomacy first, right? The Danes have repeatedly said they are willing to collaborate on all of the concerns that the president has, whether it's more troops, mineral rights, intelligence sharing. Why does the president feel he needs to own Greenland and not and put out the threat of military action when this could be done through diplomacy?
Well, who said diplomacy isn't taking place behind the scenes, Dasha? I mean, the president is interested in diplomacy. His national security team is as well. And of course, he's always willing to pick up the phone for everybody and hear out their concerns. But the president is the president of the United States of America, and he's always going to be very clear about what he views as being in our nation's best interest. Reagan.
Caroline, I have a question for you on Venezuela, and then I'd love to ask you about Minnesota and Tim Walz.
Sure.
On Venezuela, I'm wondering, does the administration hope to start sending more Venezuelan migrants back home or have them self-deport if the situation in the country improves?
As far as I'm concerned, the policies of the Trump administration and the Department of Homeland Security have not changed. All those illegally present in the country are subject to deportation. And I would just like to add, how we got here. The president was very clear on the campaign to the American public, and it's one of the many reasons they resoundingly reelected him back to this office, that he was not only going to crush foreign drug cartels, but that he was not going to stand by and watch as the illegitimate Venezuelan regime was sending illegal criminals and gang members and rapists and murderers to our country, which happened to the tune of thousands under the previous administration and president. And so there could be nothing more America first than this operation that took place last week. And I would just remind all of you in this room that there were innocent Americans like Jocelyn Nungare who lost their lives at the hands of dangerous Venezuelan criminals who were sent here by the Maduro regime. And that has been the president's North Star and guiding principle throughout his entire policy since January 20th.
Tim Walz in Minnesota. Does the administration believe that Tim Walz potentially dropped out of the governor's race because he could be under criminal investigation?
I don't know if there's a criminal investigation. If there was, I wouldn't be able to comment on it from up here, to be honest with you. But I think Tim Walz probably dropped out of the race because he realizes he no longer has the support of the people of his own state, which is a remarkable downfall considering he was the number 2 on the Democrat Party's ticket just about a year ago. When it comes to Minnesota, the fraud that we have seen, the wide scale of fraud is really remarkable. It's egregious. I would encourage every single journalist in this room to go to Minnesota and to cover it yourselves. As for the Trump administration, we have officials who have been on the ground almost every day. Secretary Noem was there yesterday. Secretary Bessent will be traveling there later this week to talk about the fraud and to do a roundtable on this very topic. And I would just like to leave you with an update. To date, the Department of Justice has charged 98 total defendants in several Medicaid fraud and related case programs. 64 were convicted, and 85 of the 98 charged were of Somali descent. The DOJ has also issued over 1,700 subpoenas executed over 130 search warrants, and they have now added more attorneys to their office there to absorb the case flow. DHS is on the ground going door to door conducting large-scale criminal and HSI investigations. They have also sent approximately 2,000 agents to Minneapolis to assist with law enforcement and immigration enforcement. As I said, Secretary Noem was on the ground yesterday. The Department of Health and Human Services has also begun requiring a justification and photo evidence for all child care related payments nationwide, and they required Minnesota to conduct a full audit of all child care centers. They also froze $185 million in funding to Minnesota. And Dr. Oz, who was just here, also notified Governor Walz they're going to begin auditing Medicaid recipients and deferring payments on claims based on waste, fraud, and abuse. The Department of Labor is also conducting a targeted review of Minnesota's unemployment program. Department of Agriculture requiring Minnesota to conduct recertification for SNAP recipients, and HUD has launched investigations into the public housing. SBA has also suspended nearly 7,000 borrowers amid suspected fraudulent activity. So, with all of that, rest assured, this is an all-hands-on-deck effort from the entire administration to get to the bottom of this and to ensure that the ripping off of taxpayers in the state of Minnesota, and it won't just be Minnesota, it'll be any state across this country where fraud has taken place, and we are protecting law-abiding, tax-paying American citizens. Phil.
Thank you, Caroline. Just to follow up on Greenland, there are treaties already on the books that give the United States access to the island. They can construct and maintain military bases there. We can house personnel on the island. The U.S. has control of landings, takeoffs, anchorages, etc. So I'm curious if you could just spell out for the American public, what specifically would the U.S. gain by taking control of Greenland that the U.S. doesn't already have access to right now?
More control over the Arctic region and ensuring that China and Russia and our adversaries cannot continue their aggression in this very important and strategic region. And there would be many other benefits as well that, again, the President and his national security team are currently talking about. Jeff, I'll give you another one.
A broad sort of stand-back question on foreign policy. Are you concerned about increasing tensions with Russia because of the tanker seizures? And how does the U.S. action in Venezuela impact the ongoing relationship with China and the President's relationship with President Xi?
I think the President has very open, honest, and good relationships with both President Putin of Russia and also President Xi of China. He has spoken with them numerous times, as you know, since coming to office about a year ago, and I believe that those personal relationships are going to continue. But as for the President and the United States, he's going to enforce our policy that's best for the United States of America. And with respect to these ship seizures, that means enforcing the embargo against all dark fleet vessels that are illegally transporting oil, and only legitimate commerce, to answer your question much earlier, Rachel, determined by the United States is going to be permitted. And that's the policy of this administration, and he's not afraid to implement it.
One more stand back. Just one more stand back. I just the last one. I remember asking the President at the very beginning of his term if he was committed to Article 5 and NATO, and he said yes. Has his stance on NATO or his commitment to NATO changed?
Did you see his statement earlier today? He said we will always be there for NATO even if they are not there for us, and I think that answers your question directly. Yes.
Just to follow up on what Jeff was saying there, will the President commit that if any NATO members are attacked, the United States will come to it?
Again, the President addressed this directly himself this morning after seeing the coverage from all of you in this room on television, and he made it very clear we're always going to be there for NATO, even if they have not done right by the United States of America. And they have not, they have finally increased their defense spending at the request of this president, but it was only because of this president that they did that. We'll take a couple more. Michael, go ahead.
Thank you, Caroline. Happy New Year and congratulations.
Thank
Two
you.
questions, if I
You
may.
too.
One on healthcare, one on Mexico. On healthcare, the president says he wants Republicans to be flexible on the Hyde Amendment in order to pass healthcare legislation. What is the White House's message to pro-life voters who say federal funding for abortion goes against their values?
Well, the president did not change the administration's policy. It was President Trump who signed an executive order protecting the Hyde Amendment. It's the Trump administration that has taken multiple actions on various fronts to ensure that taxpayer dollars are not funding the practice of abortion. What the president was saying yesterday was Republicans, and frankly Democrats too, need to show a little bit more flexibility so we can actually get something done with respect to the issue of health care. Republicans have amazing ideas. The president himself, as we spoke about earlier, has launched this Most Favored Nation drug pricing initiative, has cut good deals with Big Pharma. He wants to see Republicans and Democrats too, if they're willing, codify those executive orders into law so that these good deals can remain and these prices can continue to be lowered long after this president and this deal maker in chief is gone. Presidents talked a lot about health savings accounts and giving more money back to the healthcare consumer rather than to these giant insurance companies, and he's been very outspoken and tough on them too, and I think you'll see more and hear more from him directly on that issue. So he wants to see Congress get something done with respect to health care, and that was the point that he was driving home yesterday.
To go, Karoline,
Haley,
President Trump says the drug cartels are running Mexico. What action does he need to see Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, take to prove that she's in control of that country, in control of those cartels? And does the White House believe she's able to do that without U.S. intervention?
Look, I think the president was speaking very candidly and frankly about the reality on the ground in Mexico. Haley.
Caroline, Happy New Year. I wanted to
Thanks,
ask
you
you
too.
about the seized tanker, the Vela. There were reports before this that Russia had sent a submarine to escort it. Was there any engagement with that submarine? And then was the deconfliction line with Russia used ahead of boarding that?
Again, this was a Venezuelan shadow fleet vessel that has transported sanctioned oil. The vessel was deemed stateless after flying a false flag, and it had a judicial seizure order, and that's why the crew will be subject to prosecution. Mary.
On Colombia, the president had talked over the weekend and suggested that he would be open to an operation there. Should the president of Colombia be expecting Delta Force anytime soon? And then I had another one for you on California.
That would be a very unwise question for me to answer, to weigh into. What's your next question?
On California, can you share any more about the fraud investigation? The president said that there was one. Who's being investigated and where is it starting?
Again, this is going to be a all-hands-on-deck government-wide effort. The president has directed all agencies across the board to look at federal spending programs in not just Minnesota, but also in the state of California to identify fraud and to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law all those who have committed it. Take one more. Sure.
Thank you. Caroline, yesterday was the 5-year anniversary of January 6th. Democrats and mainstream media continue to push their big lie that it was an insurrection and that police officers died that day. The reality is that 4 Trump supporters died on January 6th and 2 women were killed by January 6th police. Everybody knows Ashley Babbitt was shot in cold blood by Capitol Police Officer Michael Byrd, but there was another woman, her name was Roseanne Boyland from Georgia, and she was pepperballed, gassed, and ultimately brutally beaten with a stick by January 6th police officer Lila Morris. The Biden administration and mainstream media lied and told Americans Roseanne Boyland died of a drug overdose on Capitol steps. Her family is now asking for an investigation. Is the administration aware of the circumstances of her death, and will there be an investigation finally?
Well, for investigation, I will have to defer you to either the FBI or the Department of Justice, and I'm sorry to have to do that. But with respect to all of the facts that you just laid out, the White House relished the opportunity yesterday to actually create a new website to share the facts with the American public, but also all those in this room. We knew the media would be covering January 6th quite a bit because they think it's something that the American people are still believing their lies on. They think it's something that still helps their case against this president. Obviously not, or else he wouldn't have been reelected in an overwhelming fashion in November of last year. And so I would encourage everyone to take a look at the website. It's quite well done. And thank you all very much. It's great to be back with you.
Thank you.
All right, the first White House press briefing of the new year in the history books. And speaking of J6, John Strand running for Congress in Florida. He will join us here shortly. Also, Monetary Gold, Scott Shanae will join us as well. Meantime, for those of you who caught our interview with country artist Neil McCoy earlier, today is his 10-year anniversary of saying the Pledge of Allegiance every day. Again, for the past 10 years, posting it on social media. A number of his fans love seeing it on Facebook and other places out there. We have a photo of country artist Neil McCoy, who, again, was at the White House today to celebrate this 10-year anniversary. Again, saying the Pledge of Allegiance literally every single day for the past 10 years. That's an awesome story to report to you with Neil McCoy, the country artist. In the meantime, as we await that live interview with Monetary Gold, let's go to a recorded interview with John Strand, again, running for Congress in Florida, and again, someone that was exonerated when it came to the whole J6 fiasco. So let's go to that interview with John Strand. After that, we'll have an interview with Monetary Gold. I'm Matthew Alvarez. Thanks for watching the live stream. Let's go to that interview right now. And joining us now on Right Side Broadcasting Network is John Strand from the great state of Florida. John, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, Matthew, thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure and really exciting new start to the year in 2026.
Exactly. So let's talk about that. What does it look like for you in 2026 when it comes to campaigning and becoming a congressman out of the state of Florida?
Yeah, it's an incredible time right now. We have such an opportunity. I keep telling people that 2026 is our generation's 1776. What do I mean by that? Well, in 1776, we had to make a decision as a people. When the settlers first came to settle the Americas, they actually still saw themselves as Englishmen. America was still being understood and born, but we came to this moment where tyranny became too oppressive, and the colonists had to decide, we are a free people. We're going to rise to our separate and equal station, as it says in the Declaration, because we have rights given to us by God that King George cannot overtake. So we had to come to that decision. But we remember the famous picture of President George Washington in Valley Forge, freezing in that famous winter, on the verge of defeat, thinking the Republic was going to slip from his grasp before it had even been created. And yet he trusted in God, and he had the resolve and support of a contingency of soldiers that committed to the principles of liberty and justice and overcame the oppression and birthed the Republic. I think we're at that moment again, Matthew. 2026 is a moment where President Trump clearly is our George Washington, but he can't win this battle against tyranny by himself. He needs soldiers. So I'm asking people to go to johnstrand.com and join the fight to get patriots into Congress so that we can reclaim this republic.
Exactly. That's what's needed. Real deal people, patriots that are everyday Americans as well, that have the people in mind and heart. And you're doing it for yourself as well, because you want to be free too, you know? Let's talk about that a little bit, right?
Right. I know the value of freedom because it was taken away from me. I was thrown in a federal prison and abused terribly in isolation. Through this process, from a weaponized DOJ and a weaponized government over the Otto Penn Biden administration. But just because President Trump's back in office doesn't mean we've fixed the problem or we're in the clear. We're actually further into the battle than we've ever been. And this is such a pivotal moment. But yes, I am fighting for my own rights, my own freedom, my own family. And every American citizen should be fighting for that. They should be pursuing the destiny that God's created for them, the freedom of their own lives, their own rights, and their own families to prosper in security. And that's what America was founded for, but it really is under assault. And the only way, Matthew, that we're going to be able to reclaim the republic, as I keep talking about, is really understanding that America is for Americans. So, of course, I'm talking about our number one policy pillar for our campaign at johnstrand.com, which is sovereignty, meaning we have to shut down immigration entirely because it's a scam that's been exploited against the American people for far too long. I don't want a 50-year mortgage. I want a 50-year moratorium on all immigration until we clean our own house and set up America to be prosperous for Americans. But we're also needing to talk about what it means to be an American and what this country is for. And, you know, I really believe that being an American is committing to the covenant, or that's a word for a promise. America's a promise. And that promise is what? The Pledge of Allegiance. We are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we need people in government that will commit to those basic principles.
Amen. And that's what we want. That's what I want. That's what a lot of people want. And again, it's common sense. And that's what you're speaking here for the constitutional rights of the people, to keep them and to keep the Constitution, the law of the land. Let's talk about the primary coming up. Tell us about the dates and then the election date and all of that so people know how soon this is actually all going to be.
That's a great question. Part of the struggle in our country is there's a lack of knowledge. My people perish for lack of knowledge, it says in the Bible. And there's a lack of understanding about just the details of elections and the civic process. So we need to really unite as a people and pound the pavement, whether it's on X and Instagram and digital platforms, or whether it's hopefully at churches and community centers in person, where we're engaging with our friends and neighbors and getting involved in the government, getting involved in politics. It's actually a responsibility that comes on all of us as American citizens. So the primary coming up for me, for our campaign, johnstrand.com, is August 18th of 2026. And actually, it's an important point, Matthew, because people lose track of primary elections. But that's where the battle's actually really waged. Because if you just wait until November to vote, you often are getting the lesser of two evils. You haven't actually participated in the process to select legitimate patriots and citizens that actually care about their country and really do believe in the Constitution and aren't bought and sold and paid for by the establishment. That's why I encourage people to go to johnstrand.com and get in this campaign. This guy he didn't sell out to save his own skin. I'm never going to sell the American people out either.
John Strand running for Congress out of Florida, sir. Again, thank you and good luck to you. We'll see you again later in the year.
Yes, sir. God bless you. And thanks to all the work you guys do. And God bless the United States of America, Matthew.
Thank you, sir. It's really a team effort, as you guys see out there. It's we the people, it's the people that support common sense and all the things that we believe in here in this country versus those that don't. And it's we have the majority of the numbers, right? We have the majority of the country, common sense patriots across this land. And you just saw, of course, John Strand running for Congress in Florida. You also saw prior to that the White House press briefing with Karoline Leavitt. Also in attendance, you saw Dr. Oz, you saw RFK Jr., Brooke Rollins, and others. Speaking of the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, let's go to a new video that she just posted about today's announcement. Take a look.
The center of making America healthy again is making American agriculture great again.
40% of children are overweight and obese. Cancers are up 79%. Autism rate is stunning. 40% of American adults are obese.
And it is largely because of our toxic, ultra-processed food system.
Make America healthy again. Our goal is to get toxins out of our environment, poisons out of our food supply, and keep our children healthy and strong.
We know the American food system is the safest in the world, but now we must do what it takes to make it the healthiest. Every child in America that is hungry will have good food to feed them. And moving farm fresh produce as much as is possible into the schools and into these kids.
The SNAP program is designed to help those in need of assistance, not to hurt them.
We are on track to sign multiples of SNAP waivers to get junk food out of our food stamp system.
Change to remove artificial colors from their products.
Huge companies
cut out synthetic food dyes.
It's just so great to be a partner in all of this.
It is a new day at USDA. This announcement today on regenerative agriculture puts American farmers first as part of the solution. These guidelines will prioritize whole, healthy, and nutritious foods.
We will make America healthy again, and what an honor it is to be a part of that.
Well, thank you, sir.
And if you watched that press briefing earlier, you saw the USDA's new food chart that's out there. It's making its rounds on social media as well. So if you missed any of today's live broadcast, of course, you can replay and scrub back a little bit if you want to watch anything that you may have missed. We had a lot of live interviews and recorded interviews and other videos and news stories that we spoke about since 9:30 this morning, leading up to that press briefing, which started at about 11:15 on the East Coast. In the meantime, getting ready to interview Scott Shenney with Monetary Gold. In the meantime, Patriot Kate Monroe and the VetCom CEO there, also a conservative patriot in the sense of a former military veteran, along with Chad Bianco, who is the Riverside County Sheriff and is also running for governor in California. They recently went to Skid Row in Los Angeles to really tackle the issues and to see what can be done to help that area out. We have that video. Let's go to it right now.
Cool. So it's like having a hoarder's house. Where do you start? Well, you start by, you have to first bucketize these people. They are not all in the same problem. Now, many of them are on drugs, but a lot of them have mental health problems. Some of them just got out of prison, like this beautiful guy that we talked to that cried with us. Some people are circumstantially homeless. You can't treat it all with the same wand, and you certainly can't treat it without any money.
Right, and I will tell you, personal experience, my history, what I did, and the same thing I'm going to do for California. And what is a perfect example of the failure of Skid Row and of Los Angeles politics and of state of California politics. I made Riverside County law enforcement better because it was not about treating crime. It was not about addressing crime. That's easy to say, we're going to address crime. We went way above and beyond that, and we addressed quality of life issues, because every single community's quality of life issue is different.
Yes.
Skid Row's quality of life issue is not the same as Beverly Hills.
No.
So why are we treating it the same? Why are we letting people that live in Beverly Hills decide what's best for Skid Row? And treating this is the failure of California, homelessness. We keep calling it homelessness. It has nothing to do with homeless here.
Yeah, no.
We walked around building after building after building of homes that are, the people are still living in tents. Yeah. This is not about homes. This is about drug addiction, alcohol addiction, mental health care, and the complete failure of us to address human beings in a compassionate manner to get them the help that they need. And one thing that struck me very strange that I haven't thought about from the lady that's working here is these people are they have been spent years and years and years of complete drug and alcohol abuse and homelessness, living on the street, that they don't remember what it is to live any other way.
Basic things.
So she is having to teach them that you wake up in the morning and brush your teeth and comb your hair. And if we are not going to address this issue like that, instead of saying we need more homes, because this is where I know where the money is gone. The money is gone in homes, because the money went to the person that owns that building.
Yeah.
The money went to the person that remodeled that building, that takes care of the building. It's not going to the people. This industrial complex is enabling all of that we see on the street, the tents on the street, so all of these other people can make money. That's not what it's supposed to be for.
Yeah, I mean, and you and I were just talking about, if you took all the voters in California and you had them do this same walk, just like we have done, with different outlets today. It's easy to say what you believe until you have to go see it and walk in it and listen to it. Then you go, man, this is not the story I've been told.
Yeah.
And I just think that in this season, we need a strong leader on law enforcement, because without law enforcement, like my idea for the base camps, it will not exist. If there can't be a binary choice of hey, you can't camp here, you can't piss and shit here, you can't do drugs here, kill people, you can't do that here anymore. So you got to go to jail where you'll get clean, or you can go to this base camp and we're going to provide you a long enough runway and services to get clean, but you can't do it here.
Yeah.
When that works, when law enforcement, the police at the LAPD were saying to us today, we can't even do our job.
Yeah.
I feel like if you were the governor, you could flip law enforcement back on and suddenly these guys can go do what they were hired to do.
Yeah, I think that what has to happen, number one, me winning, because me winning puts this in the limelight.
Yeah.
Because me winning makes me down here And I guess it's how I was raised, and that lady even said it. You do what you're going to say you're going to do. Yep. A lot of people say, well, how are you going to do that? It's like, it doesn't matter how I'm going to do it. I told you I'm going to do it, so I'm going to do it. That's how I was raised. It's called integrity. It's called doing the right thing. And so the embarrassing thing for me, for Los Angeles government, and yes, our mayor should be embarrassed. Prior mayors should be absolutely embarrassed, because Skid Row has been Skid Row for decades and decades
and
it
just
decades.
Gets worse and worse.
We heard today from the people living in it and the people that are working in it that it is getting worse and worse and worse. And there has to be an absolute mission to fix it.
All right, so that was out there in Los Angeles. That was Patriot Kate Monroe on the right, and the Riverside County Sheriff and gubernatorial candidate for California Governor Chad Bianco to the left, talking about homelessness in Los Angeles, Skid Row, and other areas out there in LA. Of course, we had earlier today Kate Monroe live with us on the network here. We also were in New York on Staten Island. Robert Burkhead, he's the president of the Young Republican Club there. So from coast to coast, talking various policy items and how the country is doing from those perspectives. We also were down in Florida with Ann Vandersteel and all across the country here. Let's do this. In the meantime, let's go to the president of the National Religious Broadcasters, Troy Miller, for an interview as we stand by here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. It's 12:42, Wednesday, January 7th. If you'd like to follow me on Truth Social, it's at Matthew Alvarez. And on X, it's at Matthew US Media. And if you'd like to follow Right Side Broadcasting Network, it's at RSBN on Truth Social and at RSB Network on X. Meantime, let's go to Troy Miller, the president of the National Religious Broadcasters. And joining us now on Right Side Broadcasting Network is Troy Miller. He's the president of the National Religious Broadcasters. Sir, thank you again for joining us on Right Side.
Hey, thanks for having me today.
Definitely. Let's talk about celebrating America's 250th anniversary. And then you guys also have a convention. Can you tell us about how you guys are celebrating America's 250th?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So we do have our annual media convention coming up in February 17th through the 20th, right here in Nashville, Tennessee at Opryland Gaylord Hotel. It's the largest gathering of Christian communicators. And on that Thursday night, we are going to celebrate and commemorate America's 250 by really looking at the foundation behind the country. What led up to that July 4th and that Declaration of Independence, and what role did Christianity play in that? And that's what our focus will be on for this celebration.
That's awesome. That's perfectly said. I mean, that sounds interesting to a lot of people, including communicators across this country. How have things changed before your eyes when it comes to mainstream media, conservative media, Christian media, and just all the things?
Yeah, that's a good thing. Just put it all a thing. I mean, look, our country was founded on these Christian principles. And one of those principles was freedom and truth and information. And the premise was that the people, if the people had the power in the people and the will, then they could self-govern in a way. That's how our whole government was set up. Look, we have changed so much from that today, especially when we look at media and mainstream media. I don't think we really have independent mainstream media anymore. I think legacy media, for the most part, are just propaganda houses for a lot of progressive movements today. And that's unfortunate, because we need that kind of media. Christian media has been filling in that gap. Christian media has really stepped up to be the media that is trusted by the population. We did a survey earlier this year, back in January, with the Barna Group, that found over 66% of the general population of America found Christian media valuable and trustworthy. And so that's a big step for us as Christian, big responsibility for us. But it tells you what's going on in the mainstream media today. The mainstream media, people just look at it again as a lot of propaganda.
Exactly. That's what we've been seeing. And then the actions are speaking louder than the words, and especially with you guys, National Religious Broadcasters, because you guys are helping to combat Christian persecution worldwide. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, and here's another failure of the mainstream media. Right now, over 380 million Christians are living under some sort of persecution, some sort of governance that is oppressing them, and a lot of times plainly outlawed them. I was in Nigeria this summer, and a lot of us know in the news, Nigeria has been in that news lately. The North has been atrocious. It's nothing short of a genocide of Christianity in the northern part of Nigeria. We see the same thing in other countries in Africa. We see this going on with Hindu nationalism in India. We've even seen our allies in South Korea arrest pastors for speaking from the Bible. And look, there have been over 1,000 arson events this year alone across Europe on churches that are there. And yet, you look at the mainstream media, you would never know any of this. Less than 2% coverage across the board for this. So we've really been working hard to get this message out. It's the most dangerous belief to hold today is the belief in Jesus Christ, to be a Christian.
Exactly, and it's the number one. It's the truth. So it's obviously getting attacked because it is so true. And how are you guys advocating now also for AM radio for every vehicle act? I mean, a lot of people love their AM radio.
They do love their AM radio. 80 million plus Americans love their AM radio. I'm a Nebraska farm boy that grew up and loved AM radio, and you listen to it, you depend on it. It's the number one source when there's a natural disaster going on to tune into. It's the best place to find, teach, and talk Christianity, gospel music, and conservative talk. Yet the car manufacturers want to pull AM radio. Not only that, they've actually announced Tesla now is going to take FM radio out of their lower models. General Motors is not going to allow you to connect your Apple CarPlay or your Android Auto to there. There's a real fight of who's going to control this information in the vehicle. Are you going to have to subscribe to an auto manufacturer's service to get that? Are you going to only be allowed to download the information they seem fit for you? Or are you going to have access to free over there? So we're hoping Congress back in session now. This bill has 350 co-sponsors. If Congress is supposed to represent the will of the people, there isn't a more bipartisan bill right now sitting in the House of Representatives or the Senate waiting for a floor vote and get to the president's desk. So we're going to be pushing very hard this month to get that bill to the floor, get a vote on it. We think it's going to pass overwhelmingly, and AM radio is going to be protected in the vehicle at least for the next decade.
It would be great to see that happen. And how can people that are interested to learn more about National Religious Broadcasters learn more? What's the website? But also for those that may be in broadcasting that see this across the country and are interested in that Nashville, Tennessee event.
Yeah, exactly. So go to nrb.org. That's our main website. You can find out all of these issues, all the things that we're doing, all the different various laws we're tracking in regulations, also the fights on the corporate structure that's going on. All of that information is at nrb.org. You'll also find the link there to NRB Convention that will tell you about the National Convention coming up in February. And look, whether you're a broadcaster, a podcaster, or just want to make your own social media better, we are running hundreds of workshops. We have almost 200 speakers that'll be there talking about all of these issues, plus giving a lot of hands-on of how to be a better communicator yourself.
That's awesome. Great stuff. The president of the National Religious Broadcasters, Troy Miller. Thank you again, Troy, for joining us here on Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Thanks for having me.
Definitely. And those of you sticking with us on this live stream, thanks so much for doing so. A couple more quick videos that we're going to play here, and then most likely we'll be wrapping up our coverage for today. If any breaking news happens, of course, throughout the day, we'll be here for it live on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Two interesting stories, specifically the first one here. In case you missed it, over the holiday season, I was traveling with my family from the Northeast back down here to the Southeast, and along I-81, I noticed three very, very large crosses in the parking lot of a church, and then also two American flags. And I mean, we're talking hundreds of feet in the air. You can definitely see it from the highway. And, you know, if you know me, I like to take photos and get videos of that kind of stuff. So definitely stopped there for that. And while I stopped there, I ran into a Korean Christian pastor. He's been in America for 30 years, and he was there, and He was actually just getting ready to bow to the cross, and got a whole video out of it and interviewed him as well. So let's take a look at that. This was just from over the holiday break. We'll look at that. We'll look at one more video after that, and then we'll wrap our coverage for the day. Of course, there's a lot of serious news topics to talk about out there. We covered a lot of that since 9:30 this morning. So if you missed any of our coverage, please go ahead and replay it. And of course, if you missed any of that press briefing with Karoline Leavitt, we'll have that in full as soon as this broadcast ends, or you could just scrub back and go ahead and watch it if you'd like. But in the meantime, let's go to I-81, Shenandoah County in Virginia.
Every Sunday, this time, same place, same. Pray for your nation, my nation, my whole family, Korean and American. Yes.
It's wild, the things that you can do with an iPhone and get video and audio and all the things. But really, though, that was a great kind of divine appointment in some ways. Again, I was just with my family, just wanted to see the crosses and the flags, and ran into Fisher Yang, a Korean pastor who's been in the States for some 30 years. Let's wrap our broadcast with the following video. I believe what we'll do is we'll just go to this video, and right after that, we'll be closing out the broadcast. From Fort Indiantown Gap, the military cemetery, visited that over the holiday break, as well as I knew a family friend that passed away not too long ago. He was 75 years old and passed, but was in the Air National Guard when it comes to the state of Pennsylvania. So some family and friends and I visited the grave site. And then also after that, I saw the base there at Fort Indiantown Gap. That's for the National Guard, a training facility up there. Those of you in Pennsylvania watching and still with us on this live stream since 9:30, thank you so much for watching. I'm Matthew Alvarez. For all of us here on Right Side Broadcasting Network, we'll see you again soon. And here's that video.
It's awesome. Every time I come out here, it's a unique feeling because our family members buried here, and remembering all the memories with them and whatnot. But just driving past, all the grave sites of all the military families and loved ones, spouses that are buried here, and military members. It's a surreal feeling that I don't take for granted. I live 15 minutes down the road, but I don't take for granted how special this place is, and people from all over the country. Anybody can be buried here that are members of the military. So it's very unique, and always cherish the time that I'm out here, and you really feel like a special connection to the country.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from Diamond and Silk Chit Chat Live. Look, don't forget to watch my show right here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. It's imperative that you do so, okay? Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door.